The following program deals with a controversial
subject.
The theories expressed are not the only possible interpretation.
The viewer is invited to make a judgment based on all available information.
the top talent in the comic book business are here to tell everything they know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Tuesday night here on Beyond Wednesdays, another Industry of Comics show, episode 52. A lot of fun stuff to talk about tonight.
Oh, we should have had Dan DiDio on for 52. That was his favorite number, apparently.
Yeah. My two compadres in crime on this show, Jesse and Dennis, are with me, and we got an excellent couple guests tonight, and one really good one that we're going to talk about. We're going to get into con season. Con season has officially started for 2025 with MegaCon the other weekend, and it's going to be interesting to see what we think about con season going forward this year, and get some information and what people in the chat think about it. It seems very positive so far. We had a great conversation about MegaCon the other week, and it seems like everybody had a great time at MegaCon, and we're going to get really down into the whole MegaCon aspect with our first guest. But other than that, how are you guys doing this week, gentlemen?
Incredible as always. But I just wanted to bring up and we're not going to get into the weeds on the other 4 and 5, but I've always said that the first market is the newsstand of comic books, the old first market. The second market was always conventions. They started in 1964 and 1965, and they have just become the juggernaut that has been propelling this industry for 60 plus years now. And then the third market is the comic book store, which opened in the 70s. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah, I think comic conventions are a good gauge for the comic book community, not technically a comic book store, but for the community. So obviously, when I ran Phoenix Con for 4 years and it was 150,000 people, that didn't mean I had 150,000 people that shopped at my store. Yeah. I probably only got, 2%, not even 2%, maybe 1.5% of that shopped at my store. So it's a great gauge because, again, people are paying to go in to do this. Yeah. Other than that, I've had a fantastic week. I do want to give a quick update on new socks that are coming out this weekend on Just James Comics eBay Live. We have the new Boba Fett sock that is coming out. Daffy Duck, which has been amazing for us. Fred Flintstone. And new this week, I'm the only person selling these, we have the Pickle Rick sock. The Morty sock, the Rick sock, Garfield dinner, and the number one selling sock in the collectible world is the Cup of Noodle sock is back in stock. So cool stuff going on there. And then I wanted to give updates on my number one selling book this week, which is kind of funny that this is my number one selling book. This box was full of Elvira books. We have sold 127 Elvira books since me and Dennis last talked. So thank you, Dennis, for inspiring me to sell more Elvira books to the community.
It's what I do, Jesse. It's what I do.
Yeah. So great week. Obviously, live streaming is just been on fuego for us. But overall, I think a lot of sellers are out there and they're very excited about 2025. Regardless of all the news, I think the news is something that you read and you go, oh, okay, that's kind of interesting. And then you go out and sell and you just kind of forget about it until we talk about it on the show. So,
amen. Well, we have our third compadre, ladies and gentlemen, Emmet from Haven for Heroes, who had a recent Scott Snyder sighting in his store.
Actually, it's not recent.
Oh, how old is it?
That is maybe 2.5 years ago when Substacks was big.
Oh, okay. My God. That was recycled.
Yeah. So it's using that Opus Clips where I was talking to you guys about that last week. That was an interview that had 60 views when it came out. Scott Snyder. It got no traction. Nobody watched it. So I said, there's a lot of great information. There is some, inside baseball stuff in it. So I said, let's cut it up, make some shorts, and see if it's doing really well.
That's good.
So I got 20 clips out of the one interview.
Very nice.
Yeah, exactly. That's the way you're supposed to do it. I mean, interviews are timeless, unless, and say this, I don't know what the right way to say is, but unless someone passes away, it's a timeless interview that you can put up today, and no one would know the difference if you interviewed them last night or beyond in the past. So very cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
What do you say we bring in our first guest, Jesse?
Yeah. So it's very cool. I've known this gentleman for a long time. We actually used to do a podcast for the roundtable, industry roundtable show, which was 5 years ago. It was during right before COVID. It was me, him, Corey Pommel, Art Germs manager, Greg Hopkins from Boom, who's now with Boom now, and JJ from JJ Arts. Very great panel. We had a ton of guests. But it's kind of funny when I was like reviewing some of the shows that we did, because I think we did like 30 shows, seeing some of the guests we had on then and seeing the quality of guests that we have on now is amazing. This gentleman, I knew him back when he was with Midtown Comics. He now is running the whole shebang over at Fan Expo. This is Rich Capobianco joining us.
Hey,
Out of Queens.
Capobianco.
Yeah.
I just said it before
syllable
the show.
Ginzo last name.
Yeah.
You both have
Thank
a
you for having me.
Colosolo last name from Bronx Tale.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us, man. This is awesome. We were really geeking out the last couple of weeks about how great MegaCon was this year. I think most of us, that did any reporting on it, or anybody that was there, kind of realized that MegaCon has stepped up into that top 3 cons of the year spot. In our opinion, with San Diego and New York. And I think it's only a matter of time, maybe, until it jumps over New York. So pretty amazing what you've been doing. You guys have been doing over there. So congratulations on this year.
Thank you. As a New Yorker, it hurts me to try and take over New York Comic Con, but at the same time, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? Business is business. MegaCon is the show. I do 5 shows a year with Fan Expo that I'm the lead on, and MegaCon probably takes up 8 of the 12 months of the year for me. It is a monster, and when I'm there, it is a fever dream, and when I get home, I do not remember it. So it is a tornado of time.
Yeah.
Can I give a little background on you and your shows? So
Go for it.
Much like Jesse, I've been doing shows since 96 or 97. No, 94. And Informa, the company that Rich works for, they were formed several years ago to buy up the entity that was known as Wizard and add it to the Toronto Fan Expo kind of family, which had, I think at the time they had like 2 or 3 shows that they had kind of organically raised.
I think it's up to 5 they've organically raised in Canada. Yeah.
So, and then the Informa Corporation kind of bought a couple shows and then bought Wizard outright when Wizard had their last financial problems. And I'll tell you, 2 of the shows, well, I mean, I've always loved Toronto Fan Expo. An amazing show. And if you ever get out of America into the rest of North America, you'll see it's a really crazy show. It's probably the San Diego of Canada.
100%.
MegaCon was one of my favorite shows back in the day. Wizard World Chicago, which started out as Windy City Comic Con when I first started going to it, became Gareb Shamus from Wizard Magazine bought that show out and turned it into, I think, the number at one point it was the #2 show in the United States before New York Comic Con started. And you guys have elevated every show that I used to do that was what I considered the pinnacle of shows, and you have elevated every single one of them higher than what they were before.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's definitely a lot of work, but we're definitely been seeing the rewards of that lately. I mean, it's definitely, these shows are, they're becoming definitive shows. They're things that everybody wants to be a part of. The talent, the vendors, the artist alley that we have, and everything. It's just it's a phenomenal time to be doing conventions for sure.
What adjustments did you make from 2024 to 2025 that you felt was a necessity to get to that next stage?
So always quality. If we want to go from like top down, you want to do quality of guests, because they're the ones that'll get the casual person in the door. Then you look at the vendors. When you look at the vendors, it's going to sound, I guess, a little high end, I guess, for me, a little snobby, but it's like we have a pick of the litter because we have wait lists and everybody that wants to apply. So I can really cherry pick the good stuff as opposed to here's a guy who just puts stuff on a table. I could be like, oh, you have table skirting and stands and promotion and these other things that really elevate the experience. Because my mentality for the shows is I love going to comic shows. I love going to those types of things, but I want an elevated thing where it's a fan experience, but you feel like you're at a trade show. So being able to kind of dive more into that from 24 to 25 has really made the experience feel more deluxe. So.
Oh yeah. Well, one of the things that I think this year, and one of the things that you guys are known for is the quality of guests that you guys have there, quality of creators, actors, people looking for autographs. Like it is, I think that it's kind of become the #1 place to get. You're gonna walk in and you're gonna see, all the guests are gonna be there at Fan Expo.
Yeah, I mean, MegaCon specifically this year, getting somebody like Delato to come to the States, and he hasn't been to the States in like 16 years.
Yep.
So it was a phenomenal thing for him. But then it's like you start going from the top down with like Lee Bermeo and Scott Snyder, and Greg Capullo, and Frank Miller. It's anybody you could want that you have enjoyed a book from was at that show.
Todd McFarlane.
McFarlane was there. How do you forget about Todd being there? The mayor of Comic Cons,
right?
So it's a real experience, and also being able to tie some of the higher celeb guests to here's where their comic counterpart is, like having Nicholas Hoult there, knowing he's going to be Lex Luthor and he was Beast in X-Men, really making sure we're tapped in to that type of fan and that type of thing, so we get to expose the casual fan to the creator, to the comic side of things, to the movie side of things, and everything in between. So it really becomes like this all-in-one experience for pop culture.
Yeah. Is there, a very interesting thing came up about MegaCon this year.
Mm-hmm.
What is there a reason, and there might not be a reason, maybe it's just the way it happened.
Sure.
Is there a reason why there was no technically publishers there? What was the reason for that?
So last year we had IDW at the event. This year, all right. This is going to be me peeling back my own theory about everything.
Okay.
When you look at New York and San Diego, every publisher has an office in New York and California. So it's easy for them. It's like, we're just going to go down the street. When you start talking about MegaCon in Florida, now we're talking about shipping things. There has to be a reason. It's timing. It's a lot of different factors that go into that. There's always discussions, but because we're not just doing San Diego or just doing New York or like the Reed shows and love the Reed pop stuff and everything. But when you get to Fan Expo, which has 16 shows in its portfolio, it's like, oh, you know what? If it doesn't work for this one, hey, maybe we'll hit Dallas or Denver or Chicago, or maybe we'll go to the big Toronto show. So there is more of a breadth of room, because as much as we'd love the publishers to be at MegaCon, I'd love the publishers to be every month at one of our shows. So it's kind of like, you can, the same way I have the pick of the litter of I can pick what nice vendor I want, the publishers could say, well, I got something coming out in June. I'm going to just go to Dallas. We'll take it to Dallas. So that's why some years you get good publisher engagement at Mega, and some years you get kind of like maybe a little later. We got more stuff we're announcing later.
Richard, being too diplomatic. I speak as president of the comic book industry.
Yes.
I think every publisher, that's right. I did right there.
Yep.
Every publisher owes it to the retailers that they're selling comic books in every one of the markets to find events that have what did you say? 190,000 people in Orlando.
Yep.
I think they owe it to build those markets.
I mean, absolutely. I don't disagree with that.
And I mean, and the thing is I don't know your pricing, but I know what San Diego charges. I know what the unions at Reed at Javits.
Yeah.
Okay. I gotta believe, and just if you're telling tales out of school, that's fine.
Sure.
I gotta believe Orlando's convention center is probably 1/6 of what it costs to set up at Javits.
Probably.
I mean, we know convention numbers. I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm pretty close to the mark on that one.
Right.
And Dallas, probably even 1/8.
Yeah.
Yeah, but does a publisher actually have to have a table to be part of a convention?
No.
I mean, like, all right. For example, like DC was not at MegaCon in a booth space thing, but they did have editors there doing portfolio reviews. They did host a panel. So they came in, they ran the Superman trailer a couple of times on our main stage. So there was engagement, but not the engagement that I think fans and people would they want to see the booth, they want to buy the exclusives, they want to see costumes, they want to see people in the DC shirts, they want to be able to do face-to-face, which is what we all want.
That doesn't cost that much more from what they already are doing by having the little presence that they have. And that's all I'm saying is, to me, it speaks more of the comic industry not engaging with a major event like yourself than it does yourself not having the major publisher. And yes, audience, chat, that was Bryan putting his hand over his head when Dennis was getting too deep.
No. What I want to say is I agree with you, Dennis. I think that, and we've talked about this quite a bit. I think that most of the publishers in comic books have this big, huge disconnect between what the buyer really wants and what the people really want to collect. And I think that when it comes to cons shows what people really want, and that's what I want to ask Rich. Rich, how important is it to you to kind of keep your finger on the pulse of, what people are buying and what they really want? And how do you do that?
I always find that to be important, because if you don't know what people want, then they're not going to come. Like they're not going to come to the show. They're not going to show up. If keeping an eye on what everybody's into, because it's like, I'm the demographic too, right? Like when the absolute stuff with DC was coming out, I'm like, that's the stuff right now. That's what it is. Before the absolute stuff, you're like, DC, man, like, what you doing?
You ain't lying.
Yeah.
Right down there, guy. That guy right down there had more to say than I did.
And there's a reason why facsimiles outsell new books 4-1, 10-1, whatever facsimile it is. It's because there's classic stories everybody wants to own, and then there's the new stuff that, you know, in 5 minutes they'll wipe away. So it's hard to get the engagement between the fan and the publisher when they're like, I'm invested, and then you're going to take it away. So when you get something like the Absolute line coming in, and it's like, now everybody's excited. And it's really like, I've been saying this for years, there's 3 comic markets. There's Marvel, there's DC, and there's Batman. So when you get Absolute Batman going, and everybody's like, this is crazy, this is insane, it brings Scott Snyder back up, and now you're looking at DC like, just come to the show. You have the layup right now.
Yes.
But knowing that is there, like if I'm not paying attention to this Absolute line exists, then it's just, oh, you know, it's DC and they're bringing a couple of T-shirts. I have no idea what it is.
Well, let me ask a follow-up question with that, because
sure.
you mentioned that you know, Todd showed up, but you had Jim Lee 2 years ago in Dallas when I was there.
Yeah.
And it seemed like Jim was there as more of Jim Lee invited guest than he was CEO of DC Comics, Warner Brothers executive.
Sure. Well, all right. When you get to your Jim Lees and your Todd McFarlanes, they come how they want to come to the show.
Right.
So if I'm looking at Jim or you know, and we have a phenomenal guest team that deals, when you start getting that high up the ladder with Frank and Jim and Todd, and they're having those conversations and stuff, and it's, hey, do you want to come as, you know, chief creative officer of DC Comics? And he's just like, I just want to sign books and do sketches. Yep. You know what I mean? And you look at Todd and it's like, hey, do you want to come and do CGC grading and do all this other stuff and make a ton of money and blah, blah, blah. He's like, nope, I want to sign for free and meet people. So it's very dependent on how they want to promote themselves, as high up a ladder or as ground level as they want to be. And when those guys, it's like they want to be ground level. They don't have to do these things. They want to do those things. It's not like the upstart creator or the guy doing the Kickstarter that wants to go and meet every single person because it's like, I need this. It's the, yeah, sure, I could kill a weekend in Orlando. I could go to Dallas. I could go to Toronto. You know, it's just very it's a very earned school of thought that they have.
Yeah.
Well, it goes back to, you know, maybe the pressure of the comic book industry needs to be applied slightly more to the publishers to want to be in that exact same position. Like, we don't need to go do MegaCon, but we'd love to hand out some free books at an event that has 190,000 potential customers for Phil Boyle's 150 stores.
Sure. Well, we have a pretty good partnership that we do stuff with DC where it's like, as an example, where it's like our VIP bags, they're Batman branded. They have exclusive polybag comics in it that are all different types of things, you know, foils and glow in the darks and what have you, and signed and sketched and yada yada. So we try and have as much representation from the comics as we do. We do our exclusives with Marvel and any publisher that'll let us if the book is the right thing. I've noticed personally, especially since like COVID, publishers they're skittish. They're house cats, and somebody just walked in the living room and they're under the couch. Unless they know up front that this is the grand slam, we're going to be on every news site and this, that, and the other. They're like, you know, we can make a couple Instagram posts and call it a day.
Well, it's kind of funny too, because the disconnect is, aside from Marvel being at San Diego and getting the big splash last year with Robert Downey Jr., DC was at San Diego, and I think they barely had a splish, let alone a splash. And so, you know, they pay all this money to be part of this giant event, and they become a scintilla of the splash. And the same thing in New York. Like, all we heard out of New York was Peach Momoko and Todd McFarlane cause a riot, And there was nothing about Marvel's presentations or DC's presentations, and that's their hometowns.
New York and San Diego are interesting shows, and the way I view them is that San Diego is your movie con, right? It's the Hall H, it's what celebs getting announced for what project, this, that, and the other. And then when you're going in DC, it's like, we have a Superman trailer, we're not going to show it to you yet. We're working on this DC universe, we got nothing yet. But then it's like Marvel's going to come out and say, we got Robert Downey Jr. and here's a Fantastic Four cast. Hey, that's all you need. When you get to New York, now you're talking fall TV, you know, and you're talking about all that stuff. People are gearing up for, go buy this for Christmas. It's not as much newsworthy on the publisher side, but it's very newsworthy on your toy and your TV and all that type of stuff. So then that's why I like Mega, because it's your comics show. You know what I mean? And it's just one of those things where it's like, you get the comic vendors, get all the creators, and they just talk to each other and things happen. So that's the thing, is it's timing's everything. And the publishers are relying on the studios, and the studios there's summer blockbusters and stuff like that. And the comics are like, well, we don't, we'll blow up this universe again in the summer and then reboot it. So it just makes it they're doing a lot of this with each other.
Sure. The crazy thing about this, and I want to step back before MegaCon, being over at Midtown Comics, when you got into the real world and you got to have a comic book store, which just happened to me. I moved from Arizona to Florida, and I'm not in that comic book world scene. Sure. How eye-opening was it when all of a sudden you're in this convention machine that runs, even though the show's only one weekend, it actually runs 8-10 months before it. How does your mind open up to everything that you can now do and talk about?
So I love my time at Midtown. I have nothing but respect for those guys and everything like that. What it is going from there to the convention stuff is more of a same principles, but what you're paying attention to is different. It was when at Midtown, I have to pay attention to what book's coming out this month. How do I line up a signing? How do I get 300 to 400 people into that store to come do this signing and do a variant that makes sure that, because with Midtown, and this is where Midtown and Fan Expo, because I work on the exclusives with Fan Expo, it's most comic book retailers look at a variant as buy from my store. Like, I'm going to sell it for $35 to $69 or whatever, and you got to buy it from me because I'm going to burn half of a print run and there's only going to be 400 available. When I did the variants at Midtown and the ones I do at Fan Expo, the school of thought is I am selling you a souvenir. If you are a comic fan and you went to New York City, you went to Midtown Comics, that's your New York City souvenir. That's your Statue of Liberty snow globe. That's
very smart.
If you go to Fan Expo, it's like, I'm selling you a book that you can buy 15 different ways. I'm going to sell it to you for $15, but I guarantee you the guy that I did the cover with is in there and can sign it for you, and you could go talk to him.
Yeah.
So that kind of answers my question, because the hottest variant 2 years ago, and I apologize, I haven't been to a Fan Expo in 2 years because I've been busy running my new stores.
Sure,
but the hottest variant was the Batman 423 foil.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there were people like beating each other up in line at the beginning of the show. Now, I do have a slight problem, but I totally see, because you own the house and it's the house's rules. I don't like that the convention opens those outside vendor booths before the show while everybody's waiting in line to get in. And it kind of circumvents the people who are paying you roughly $1,500 for a 10x10 booth inside. It feels like you're kind of shaking the fan, the customer that they paid to have access, and you're picking them up by their heels and shaking them before they're even allowed in the door. But with that being said, you can answer that later or don't answer it at all. But with that being said, people were beating themselves for those 423s.
Yeah.
They were sold out every day at the con at some point. And then they're at Texas. And then they're sold out every day, and people are pushing to get them.
Yep.
And then Jesse's going through the line of this year's MegaCon, and guess what he's showing pictures of?
Batman 423.
Yes. And
so
go ahead.
So with 16 shows a year, right? You have to allocate that product because the mentality is we want to make sure people are able to get these things. I could put out 3,000 of those books at MegaCon knowing they're gone because it's McFarlane's most iconic DC cover. He's made 27 different statues of it. I mean, shit, I got one on my counter over here. So it's just iconic comic stuff, and it's foil and shiny, and every convention now is foil con. So it's one of those things where it's like, all right, let's bring X amount to this show, then X amount to that show, then X amount to that show, and so on and so forth. So when you got to MegaCon this year, I get the call, and it's like, there's another case of these that just happened to be buried and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, Todd's at the show, might as well bring him, because we don't know when Todd's going to come. He just calls and says, I'm coming to this one. And you're not going to say no to these things. But it's all like, I don't want to say that 423s found in Mega this year were haphazard, but it was totally haphazard. Like, it was just by accident and just happened to be there.
Okay, so your business model is not to have it for 3 years.
So,
as an evergreen.
Yes, I mean, of course you want everything to sell out, right? But you also want maximum amount of people to get their hands on it because that's branding. That's a souvenir. That keeps people coming back. So if say I did 5,000 print runs of those Batman 423s, I know they're going to sell. They're going to sell all day long, but do I need it all instantly, knowing I have 30 other books that I want to sell too? Or do I sprinkle it in and immediately attract a group to a table knowing that it's there?
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue on, we're going to continue on this, but I want to bring in another one of our guests, ladies and gentlemen, Michael Calero from Massive Publishing. Michael, thanks for joining us, man. Rich,
I'm back for more, guys.
Michael, do you know Richard? Richard, do you know Michael?
I don't believe we met, but I've done, the Fan Expo shows. You were at Fan Expo, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been a long time artist at Fan Expo shows, probably last 15 years.
We probably cross paths. This is the thing I tell everybody. We probably cross paths, but haven't had a chance to sit down and chat.
Rich,
Right, there you go.
I want to continue on this variant talk because variants, these exclusive variants have become such a big part of the hobby and the industry. I think, 15 years ago, it kind of just, was an idea, and then it just boomed into this major thing. And it's been a good and bad thing, in my opinion, for the hobby. The good, it's started a ton of new retailers off on their, business to being a comic book seller. It's given a ton of new artists and creators the ability to get their art out there. It's excitement. It's been a lot of excitement in the industry, but at the same time, it's also, anytime that there is, the good, it comes with the bad sometimes. And, you deal with print run issues where people are, what's the real print run? What's, things like we're talking about right now where people are worried that, they're being told one thing, that it's rare and it's not rare. And I think one of the most detrimental things to to the exclusive variant game is sometimes it's very hard to pick a winner all the time, and you can really be stuck with just a ton of unsold product. How important is the retailer exclusive to the future of Fan Expo conventions? Do you see that continuing? Is that something that you guys think about, you talk about?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that's always important. Merchandise is the bread and butter of any retailer, right? And to a degree, that merch booth at Fan Expo, where anytime you're about to walk in the show, that is effectively my storefront. That is effectively my product. That has the Fan Expo branding on it. That has, these are, like I said before, these are your souvenirs for the show. So they are important. I try and tell anyone, like, it's gonna sound, I hope it makes sense the way I say this. I always say, if you want to read the book, go to your LCS, buy the cover A or whatever ratio you want and read it. However, if you want the souvenir, because I'm not selling you a comic right now, I'm selling you an art print. I'm selling you the exact same book you're going to get for $3 at a store with the cover of the artist that you collect, whether it be a Delato, an Inyuk Lee, a Kale, an Alan Qua, go down the gamut of any artists. Like, what I have there is not unique as far as the guts of the book. What I have is that cover is unique. That is the thing that sets it apart. And that's what all the retailers do. But I look at everybody like this. If you ever see me at a table, because I will go and sell books occasionally when I'm at a show because it's therapeutic for me. And I'll be like, this has a 3,000 print run. This is the trade dress. This is a 1,500 print run. This is the Virgin cover. Virgin cover means it has no logo. It's printed lower, this, that, and the other. Here's a foil one. We did 500 of these. And I've definitely transitioned a lot of the stuff we do to saying when we show off exclusive, put up those print run numbers.
Yeah.
If we can put them on the book, put them on the book. One of 3,000. One of, and DC recently just changed their print run numbers, which is even better. So now it's like, instead of doing 3,000, you only have to do like 2,000, 1,500. Yeah. So it makes something rare even more desirable because you're only going to be able to get it when you're at this event.
That's important right there. That is very important, Rich, because I think that, we talk about live selling and live selling platforms pretty heavy on this show as well. And it's a big part of our industry right now, a major part of our industry. And you have this thing that's happening where back in the day, 10 years ago, you would go to a con, and I even remember you would if you went to a con, you would get a goodie bag, and in the goodie bag would be the variants for that con, and everybody got one. And it's kind of changed from being a con variant to a retailer variant at the con. Right. You know what I mean? And a lot of these items aren't, you can't only get them at the con, but you can quote unquote only get them during the weekend of the con from a certain seller. What are your thoughts on that whole game change? I mean, is that good? Is that bad? Does it help what you do? Does it hurt what you do?
So I don't. So it's a bunch of schools of thought there. Like, I remember going to New York Comic Con 2007. I've been doing conventions since like 2004, going to them. But 2007, I remember going in that Reed Pop table, and it was just a table and nothing, had black and white Scott Hanna cover Sensational Spider-Man 35. I love that book. It was my favorite exclusive I ever got because it was the first one I ever bought for myself. And I was like, well, this was the only book available. This is amazing. Now you walk down shows and you'll go to any retailer, and not only do they have a variant, they have a menu. Everybody is a bodega selling A through K of variants and stuff like that. I love variety. Too much of anything is a good thing. Too much water and you'll drown. Yep. So do I think it's bad? No, because I also think the people buying variants and doing that stuff are educated consumers at this point. It's not like 2010 to 2015 where everybody's like, I got to get every single one of them because every single one of them is just like, now people can be very selective. Oh, I want the Delato cover. I collect the Delato variants. I want the Peach Momoko Spawn cover because 3 people died in line trying to get it. It's that type of stuff. There's the book you hear about before you walk in the door, and then there's always the book you hear about after the show's over.
Right.
So it's just trying to be like, hey, maybe I'll get lucky and get that book. But I think people now are just a lot more in the, I'm going to just get what I like.
I mean, Bryan, wasn't there 500 variants on the floor?
There was 400. So here's what's amazing. And Rich, I don't know if you follow this at all, but we're big fans of the guys over at Cover Price, and they do a thing where they'll kind of keep an eye on the variants that are being called, con variants during that time.
Sure.
And there's 400. They did a list of something like 491 variants, and to be honest, it was a positive because it was down from the normal. Like I think at San Diego, it was like 900 variants. It was ridiculous the amount of variants that were out there. But I think that MegaCon was it brought that total down quite a bit, and at the same time, I'll give it to you guys. The books that you guys did for the Fan Expo variants were just really, really great pieces of art. The Del Auto stuff was knock out of this park, amazing.
Thank you.
Like, which was.
But let's not give him a full pass. What happened with Do You Poo? Why did you make so many less comics? I already talked to Murat on his end, so let's hear your answer to that.
With the Do You Poo books?
Yeah.
So the Do You Poo books, why we do those is Murat came to me and he's like, I'd like to do these with Fan Expo also. And he's like, you just tell me what you want me to do. And this year we did the Fantastic Four movie poster. And I will just look at Murat. I'm like, well, what do you want to do? He's like, I'll do these. And it was more or less like the Do You Poo stuff is just, I think it's hilarious. I know people love collecting it.
Amen.
They're at least every couple of days on my Facebook feed, I will see an ad for some Do You Poo collector group or something like that. And I'm always happy to support Murat because he's fucking cool. He's just a cool dude and stuff like that. But the thing is that I look at Murat, I'm like, well, we got to keep these print runs low. I don't want to make 3,000
right
Do You Poo Fantastic Four covers. I want to make like 150 of them and watch them sell out on Thursday at the beginning of the day and stuff. And that's just what we do. And I mean, I think I've done more Do You Poo books now at Fan Expo than anything else at this point. And no, I love doing those books. I mean, they're funny.
That's very smart, man. I think that, like you said, people are becoming more educated when it comes to the impact that creating these variants has on, the hobby, the industry, the buyers. It can really burn some people out. And I know for sure that there was a big burnout that happened, around the time of, the pandemic to about, 2024. Where
it was acetate gate. Acetate gate really killed a lot of people's love of that special variant passion.
Yes.
Right. There was that, and honestly, how many more times can you do a Spider-Man Torment homage or a Spider-Man 300 homage?
Even though I buy them all.
It's like it's an iconic image, but it's just like, why is Deadpool doing it? Why is
it's kind of like Tyler Kirkham still has that one pose for the character, and there's the regular bloody and super bloody.
And
we get it, Tyler. You like that pose. Let's move on.
But you know what? It works for him, and it's the thing of like, when people stop buying, you stop doing it. So now it's like you get a lot of these variant guys that have just been doing the same thing over, rinse, repeat. Let's do this same thing over. This worked 20 times before. Hopefully it works 20 more times. And it's just, it ain't it anymore. That's why with me to the Do You Poo thing is like, you got to have a deep cut book, something that's just for that hardcore audience. You got to have the Joker book that I did this year with the reprint of Joker 1. I was thinking about this book for a while, and then I saw a Facebook post in like one of the comic groups or something that said, why hasn't DC done a facsimile of this book? And I'm like, that's a great fucking question. So you just message DC, can you do it? And it took them a couple of weeks to find all the files, but that's what you do. That's testing the barometer and stuff. I was hoping the movie would have hit a little bit harder, but still, it's you can't go wrong with Batman, Joker, that type of stuff.
Right.
You got to have the mass appeal, but the deep cut book is what gives you all the credibility.
So I got a question. Are your books branded Fan Expo or Fan Expo to the location, like Wizards used to do in
So
Chicago.
So they used to do, before I came on, it would be whatever city it's in. Now we do our website, the Shop Fan Expo stuff on the back. Because you don't want to go to Dallas and see a MegaCon logo on. You're like, man, but as long as it's just a Shop Fan Expo exclusive, which it is, then you have no problem being like, yeah, I'll grab this, because it doesn't say MegaCon on it, doesn't say Dallas on it. It just is the brand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Brian, can you highlight that?
That right there?
Yeah. No, what I'm showing.
Oh, hold on one second here.
The sticker.
Yeah. So this
Yeah,
is what
instead of
Rich
those
is talking
non-boy
about.
covers.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. So having that makes it very easy. One of the questions I want to ask, and I think it's very important. So you're 185,000, 190,000 people, yet between the ticket stand and your booth that you're selling your merch on, there's about 10,000 square feet of just emptiness. And I know that's for people getting ready to go in and you line them up and all that. You look at your food court, over 1,000 tables there. You look at your owls that are much bigger than any con I've ever been. I mean, like almost double the size. Are you in 2026 saying, listen, I got this space, we can expand, or is that where you feel comfortable with?
So we're always looking to expand and find new ways to do things, because if you're not evolving, you can never, whether you're a local comic store, whether you're an online retailer, a convention runner, whatever, you cannot get comfortable with what you do. So next year we are going back. In 2024, we were in the West Hall, and this year we were in the North South. Next year we will be going back to the West Hall. The good thing about that is you can mess around with the map. You can change some things. Hey, maybe this didn't work the last time we were in here. We can swap this around. We can change this up. How do we evolve this? How do we evolve that? My big thing is now Fan Expo is really big on their red carpets. So I want to make those red carpets look like Vegas. It's got to be lights. It's got to be big brands. It's got to be big names. But every aisle has to be important. So I did this in 2024. These couple of aisles didn't really pan out. How do I maneuver these around to where they're more accessible? Do we make the aisles wider? Do we change what type of vendors there? Do I take my community section of like the 501st and all the freebie, the Ghostbusters cars and all that stuff? Do I put that there instead so that everybody else, all the retailers, would buy food courts and photo ops? And then everybody else who wants to get a picture with the Batmobile can hit these retailers on the way down. One of the other things that we like doing now, especially with Mega, is we zone out a lot of the show. So I put all the comic vendors with all the other comic vendors. You don't want a comic vendor in between a sword vendor, an anime vendor, and a trading card person. That guy is going to drown.
Yes. Yes. And we saw that with, multiple friends who are retailers at San Diego 2 years ago, where they just, it was very discombobulated, and that exactly happened. And some guys had great cons, and the guys who were in the areas like you're talking about, just they were drowning,
Well, but Richard, how wrong am I? A lot of that is up to those vendors being very specific on their vendor applications and profiles of telling you, the convention organizer, what they actually sell.
Yeah, I mean, there's the whole vetting process. You got to tell me what you do. I mean, there's the occasional person that is there with comics, and I'm like, well, you applied saying your props. So I don't know what to tell you. This is why I always encourage everybody who applies for a Fan Expo thing. On our application, we have put your website, put your Instagram, your Facebook. Let me get eyes on you somehow. That way I can put you in the right area. So
how important is social media as a whole to what you guys do with Fan Expo?
With what? Zoning things out and making sure people are selling the right things?
Everything, man. I feel like social media is one of the things that when we talk about a disconnect in the comic industry, social media is one of those things that is that disconnect, and I feel like it's so important that the people that are really prospering right now in this industry, they've embraced the social media aspect of their business.
I mean, like you if you're not doing the social media thing and you're a business, you might as well be a ghost at this point. This is why going to shows is important and promoting online is important. I have my local comic store in Queens here. I love them. They promote very well. Their store name is Royal Collectibles. Love those guys. They don't do a ton of shows. They do New York Comic Con because it's over a bridge, But when you get these other retailers who are like, I'm on Instagram and I'm posting and I have these books and this, that, and the other and stuff, you want to do shows so you can get that face-to-face. And you can expose yourself to a market of people that don't know you, but they're going to pass by you on the way to go take a picture with Mel Gibson. You know what I mean? And they're going to swing back around. So I think it all works in tandem, but you have to work in tandem with it. I will say 90% of the applications I don't accept are comic vendors or any vendor who, when I look for their website, says NA, not available. And I'm like, I can't do anything with that. Because if I call you up and you don't answer your phone and your mailbox is full and all these other things, now it's just like, I don't know what to do with you anymore. You know what I mean? I can't help you. So you have to be on social media. You have to want it. You know what I mean? If you don't want it, then I don't want it for you.
That's a great point.
So, Richard, my last question for you.
Go for
So now that I know we've chewed as much of the same dirt, and I'm curious if you were over at Midtown when I sold Midtown that 250,000 comics when Alex Ray was over there.
I came in right after that, actually.
Yeah, because apparently my Wonderworld logos are still on long boxes somewhere in the warehouse over in Jersey.
Probably.
But you've got enough experience in this industry to know the significance of the moment we're entering right now over the next year.
Mm-hmm.
Diamond probably going to go completely defunct.
Yeah.
Small publishers who you deal with at Midtown, and then now with the Fan Expo, people like Michael over here from Massive, the small talent, small press, small publisher level people. No offense, Michael. No, but you know the plight.
Yeah, that's my nickname.
But you understand the plight of that level of publisher and how they're all scrambling for a distributor now. What do you think an organization like Fan Expo can do to be more of a rock of this industry while it's really rocky?
So for us, and we've been experimenting, a little behind the curtain things, we're experimenting with trying to reintegrate a better small press area, things where people can get more of the exposure of things, organizing the artist alley a little bit more to make it easier to find these creators and stuff like that. Because, for me personally, if somebody comes in and they're small press and they're like, I'm going through Indiegogo or Kickstarter or all these other things, I just need to show off books and meet people, hand out cards. It's like, listen, I'm giving you the space. You do what you need to do to make that money. I give you the platform. It's up to you to make that sale, and I'm rooting for you the whole way.
I do have a challenge for that, though. I'm as a small, or as an independent publisher.
Sure.
I have, we've talked to Fan Expo a half dozen times about coming out. Okay. But if you want to have independent press at your shows and really represent comic books, the actual production of comic books, you got to invite these people as guests and not expect them to spend thousands on booths because they don't fit into Artist Alley, right? Because as a publisher, you're not an individual creator, and you're not a vendor in the sense of you're not reselling high dollar product. Like for me, it doesn't as a small press publisher or independent press, however you want to say it, yeah, and actually, I'll say like this: even massive as a publishing company that's distributed worldwide, that we do well, it's not worth it for us to go to shows very often because we're not incentivized to be there. We're not, like I think if Fan Expo wants to do a really effective job of having people who publish these books be there and bring out their talent, because like if, for instance, if I'm brought out as a guest as a publisher, then I'm probably going to bring out some of my creators. I'm going to spend that money that I would have spent on a $3,000 booth, $4,000 booth on maybe flights and maybe getting that town out there that they also don't want to spend their own money to come out and fly themselves out to be a guest for a publisher. So I think that just to put that in your ear while we're in this conversation.
Sure. I mean, like, and listen, if I'm down to have this conversation, let's do the conversation like this. So you would want to be invited as guests and all that stuff. Now, what does that look like to you?
I think as a publisher, and I think at different sizes, obviously not everything fits for every publisher. But I think as like the independent kind of medium-sized publishers, the folks, the Mad Caves, the Massives, the folks who are working with talent that we could bring out, if we're given that same kind of guest treatment that say an actor is given, put on the website, front facing, given a booth with a proper placement, not just kind of shoved off to the side. I think those are the kind of things that allow us to then bring something to the show. Like, for instance, I can't tell you how many times I've offered to go out to a show, put on workshops, do kind of signings, bring out talent. And the only thing I've ever requested from an event is like, all right, give us a table space. If you're somewhere like Dragon Con does a really great job of doing that, in my opinion. But I'm like, hey, give us a good booth space and we'll take care of the rest. Obviously that doesn't always work because you're trying to sell that space. Sure. But would you rather have, the 8th sword vendor or the 10th t-shirt vendor or the people that are actually making, the comic books that built up the events that people are going to?
Totally. I mean, like, I understand that now. Dragon Con is great with that.
Yeah.
Dragon Con is also not as much of a comic show to make their money as they are heads in beds, because it's 5 hotels tied together, right? So they're selling hotel rooms, and that's where the money comes from there. So they could just look and be like, take a couple tables, do what you got to do. And I love them for that. That's a 75,000 person party.
Founded by a pedophile, but let's glaze over that.
Yeah, we're going to skirt right past that one.
Amen.
But with Fan Expo and the idea you're presenting is now, for me, I'd look at that and be like, yeah, that makes sense, right? We want to give you exposure, we want to do this other stuff. Now, I would also look at, and if I had to put on my Fan Expo hat and stuff, be like, well, I'm not going to give space to DC Comics, and they're a massive name, and I want them at my shows, and I'm not going to look at them and be like, take a 40 by 40, and I just want you there, please, and I'll fly everybody you want out and staff and stuff like that. Getting people on a website, that's easy work. If you wanted to be like, hey, we're coming, we want to be on the website, that's fine. I mean, that's comic talent. The more comic talent I can promote, I'm always on board for something like that. But space is limited. At the top of the show with you guys, I was talking about how we have wait lists. MegaCon, I've already got, I could fill each year 3 MegaCons over. I could fill those if they wanted to give me 3 buildings of that size.
Well, and Richard, let me just ask one more question.
Sure.
As much as we would love the 5,000 to 10,000 people that came to see the Lord of the Rings cast reunion,
sure,
they're probably want to buy a sword more than they want to buy a comic book. And he has to make sure there's a vendor for them just as much as.
So this is where I'm going to go. So putting on just like how successful is a show to a showrunner, right? it's people's hands. You have to look at people's hands throughout the show. If you got empty hands, you got a shit show. If everybody's hands are full, you did a good job. MegaCon's one of those shows. Everybody's hands are full with stuff. I don't care if it's swords, comics, shirts, Funkos. So many Funkos. You know what I mean?
Too many Funkos.
As long as people have stuff. Now, with a show like Mega, we do stuff where there is your in-between Artist Alley and vendor, and those are our featured Artist Alley booths. They're 10 by 10s. They're roughly the price of a premium end cap at a show, and you can do what you need to add them in a little bit more of a designated space between retail, between Artist Alley, where everybody who wants to go into either one of those realms has to pass by you. And we put a lot of people in there. We put people like Clayton Crane want to go in that area. We've had comic talent. We've had publishers, all that other stuff. So if it was like the happy medium of let me get you in a featured booth, buy the featured booth, but I'll get you listed on the website and make sure that your booth number is listed and all this other stuff. Like that's the corporate happy medium of things. Could there be other incentives and stuff like that to make?
Do you think that's value for like a, like to be on the website? I mean, like I was using that as an example of like the type of treatment is the example I'm using, not that the effectiveness. What I'm talking about is like the, if and I'm not just saying your show. I used to do 42 shows a year personally.
Sure.
Right. I can count on one hand, the number of shows that would bring out small press and medium press publishers and treat them like guests when that is essentially the people that, are making the books that are filling your shows. Besides, obviously there's the Marvel and DCs that are giant corporations that, they probably, those are the kind of people you want to have sponsoring the event, obviously. And I think the smallest of small presses, those fit into your Artist Alley in a way where they can take advantage of the lower pricing, the $250, premium table, whatever it is. But when you get into that medium level is was specifically what I'm talking about. Because saying like, okay, we could buy a $2,000 booth or a $4,000 booth and get placement on the website doesn't move the needle. I don't think, I think I could safely speak for most publishers like myself. I think what moves the needle is placement. It's, or a discount or having another tier. Like they used to have what was it? It was like I can't remember if it was Wizard World or one of the other shows used to have a tier that was specifically for publishers. And it was kind of in between Artist Alley pricing and vendor pricing. And I've seen that kind of disappear.
Well, that's our featured Artist Alley, right? Yeah. That's the in-between. Placement's one of those things where when I'm doing a show, and anybody who's ever been a vendor at one of my shows know, you tell me what you want to do and let's go over what works, what doesn't work. One of the things I'm, personally proud of from Mega this year, everybody I talk to, love my spot, because I tell everybody when you apply to a show, you write down what you want. Now, I can't have everybody writing, I want to be in the front door on the red carpet.
Right.
Because, it's otherwise, I'd rather just red carpet the whole friggin' show. But if it's like, hey, I want to be in between where the red carpet ends and it goes into celebrity and stuff like that, I want to be at like a crux of a big alley. It's like, let's go over it. Let's see how we make that work for you. It's all trial and error. I've been doing this for Fan Expo for over 3 years now. I've been doing MegaCon since 2022, and all those vendors, I went from rebooks of when I came in of like 80% to now we're 98% rebook on that show. And that's a lot of the events that I run because it's like you got to listen to what people want. So if it's a placement thing, it's like, if you're giving me your money, you have my ear. Like, I'm not going to just be like, take what you get. That's not how any convention should ever work with anything. You should always be cognitive and listening. And again, this is why we group the comic guys together. It's why we do the feature Artist Alley stuff. It's why, getting into the weeds of things, we have an anime area, but I know these 3 anime guys sell the same thing, so I need to spread them out so that they're not cannibalizing. It's things like that where it creates a flow through that necessity. Now with the small press stuff, of course, and the medium-sized press stuff, it's like I want to be able to give you everything you need and want, but at the same time, as a business, I need your application to open those doors.
Right.
You know what I
So,
mean? 'Cause-
Let me jump in here real fast. So
Sure.
there's one thing to apply and ask for a corner table,
Sure.
but is there a lack of people pitching what they're actually going to do and bring to the con? Is that what you're saying? There needs to be a pitch to get a little bit more versus just buying that table and saying, I want to be here.
So when I accept an application to any event, there are a few factors I look at. What are you bringing? Obviously, because no, I don't want that 7th or 8th sword vendor. That serves me no purpose. I'd rather have one really good sword vendor than 8 sword vendors. You know, but if you give me a good website, a good product, a good thing that you're trying to do, if it comes off as professional, if I email you and ask you, show me your booth setup at other shows and stuff like that. Let's see if we can make this happen. If you send me a picture and it's the standard table you get at a show and a couple of books on, I'm going to be like, come back to me when you work on it. But if you show me a full setup, it's like, great, let me accept you into the show. Now let's talk about where you're going to be in the show and why I think this will work for you. Because a lot of people say putting together shows like doing Tetris. And I say, I'm like, it's not Tetris. It's an irrigation system. You need to see the flow of where people are coming in,
It's
where
the
they're coming
Sims.
out.
It's the Sims.
Yes, it's the Sims. You just don't want to take that ladder out of the pool. And it's this whole thing of like, I know that everybody wants to be at the front door, but 90% of the time when I put people at the front door, they're like, oh, everybody just ran in, made halfway into the show, and now they're all like, you know what I mean? So I always look at people like, are you sure you want the front door? I'll do it, and I guarantee you're going to come at me mad. Happens every time.
Yeah.
So you apply. I see you're good. I see you're into it. You will have access to me 24/7 until that show's over to be able to get you where you need to be. You know, if there's realistic things like, you know, I know you were just saying, oh, just put us on the website. It's like, hey, that's a possibility that can happen. Like, it's not, you don't know unless you ask.
Amen.
You know what I
The
mean?
other thing I think is important is that you're creating a relationship too, rather than just filling out a form, right? You're talking to the promoters. That's important for people to have that relationship. Here's the other interesting thing, and I want to get into a little bit of this before we change topics. I want to talk about the 2025 con season. MegaCon is the start of the con season. The con season is kind of ever changing, and it was a big success for the most part. But we do have these dominoes that are starting to fall in the comic book industry, and Dennis kind of hit on it earlier, where he talked about what's going on with Diamond, and now we have Michael here who is kind of dealing with that in a way with the small publishers. We're going to lose quite a bit, most likely quite a bit of actual retailers, small press publishers, creators. They're going to pack it in because it's just...
Brian, let me interrupt you for a second. Comics Pro just happened last weekend. It's all fake. Don't worry about it.
But you guys know what I'm saying.
We solved all the problems.
Yeah.
Yes.
Comics Pro looked like a morgue.
Yeah.
It's like 200 people there. Maybe tops.
All the people.
I think there was 400 people there. 500?
Richard, I would love to talk to you about some ideas that would also help people like Michael, would help a lot of small press. But when you see a giant vacuum that is going to be caused in this industry, I don't think anybody can fix it and help fix it better than an organization like yourself. And it could be time for somebody like you guys to step up and go, hey, let's get a panel on how to open a comic book store, how to do it right. Let's get some panels on the industry of comics.
Sure.
Where people like us could help
content creation, social media.
It's an opportunity for you guys to come in and create a stable core where this vacuum is going to be. And I'm telling you, it's going to be there. It is. Everybody on this panel knows it's going to happen.
You don't think the industry is going to get fixed by 2 Marvel DC crossover one-shots?
No, because they only do that when the industry is at its peak. You know that,
right? Only when it's at the best of times, right?
Right, exactly. How many comic book panels did you have? And obviously, I know you don't run that part; you run the convention as a core. But how many comic book panels did you have this year around?
So when you say comic book panels, like, are you talking with comic talent? Are you talking
talent and instructional?
So with talent and instructional, we do sketch duels where it's more fun. I don't know. I'll explain sketch duel just for anyone that doesn't know in the chat or whatever. The sketch duel, we will get 2 creators who have a similar style. We'll put them in a room. It's audience participation. They'll say, we want to see you draw Godzilla eating a hot dog, and now you're getting these creators, and they got the cameras on them and stuff. They're showing you how they're drawing it. This is what I would do here. This is what I would do there. Here's a big fucking hot dog. And then they give somebody in the crowd the artwork and stuff like that.
I think I saw Carla Cohen and Perillo doing it at MegaCon this year. Yeah,
Carla Cohen and Perillo did it. Bill Morrison's a big participant in those things. A lot of the top tier talent are into those things. We like doing those because it's good fan engagement. It's a good way to spend some time with the creator and learn a little bit of stuff. And we'll do like 3 to 4 of those a day. So if you're talking a 4-day show, you're talking about like 16 almost of these sketch duels. We had a Frank Miller panel about Daredevil and comic books hosted by Todd. DC held a couple of panels. I think one of them, I thought DC was going to come in and host a panel on the Absolute stuff, and they did a panel about Jorge Jimenez, and I was like, sure. Jorge's a great artist. Why not? That's worth a panel.
I'd do a panel on him instead of Absolute Batman.
Yeah.
It's like, why not?
But again, it's that disconnect. The Absolute stuff is the hottest stuff in DC. It's what everybody's talking about.
Now, here's one thing I will say from my side of what happens. We have applications for anything you want to do at a show, including we want to do panels. We want to do this. We want to do that. People have to actually apply to them and say they want to do these things. Hey, we would like to talk about the state of comics. Hey, we'd like to talk about this, that, or the third. And if it's good comic programming, if it's informative, like I had a Artist Alley guy who came up and he's like, I want to do a panel about if you're just starting out in Artist Alley and you want to set up at a show and costs and how that looks and how that works. And, just from experience, I'm like, yeah, I'll give you right to our programming team and hopefully they have space on the schedule. Anything that's informative, I'm always all about. Surprisingly enough, one of our most well-attended panels every year at MegaCon is with NASA. They'll come and talk about black holes and educate, and it's standing room only, and I'm just like, damn, people come to a show. The minute somebody sits in a chair in a programming room, they want to learn. They want to be educated. That's why they're there. They can fan out and fanboy and fangirl on the floor anywhere else. But when you go in that panel room, you sit down, if you can educate somebody, like that's where we did that.
Very cool.
What do you see going forward again for 2025 that you guys have coming up? What are the bright spots in 2025 for Fan Expo after MegaCon?
Bright spots after MegaCon. I mean, like there's our Dallas show, the Denver show, the Chicago show, the Toronto show. You know, every show is treated as important as Mega because, you know, when you're going to, like me, I started out the year in January in New Orleans for the show there, and it's like I got to treat that show just as important as I treat MegaCon because that's people's money, that's people's livelihood, that's fans. You know, I look at somebody in New Orleans and they live there and they're not traveling or anything like that. That's their New York Comic Con.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's where they go and meet people. That's where they go and get their stuff signed. That's where they go and buy their back issues or their new stuff and interact and be part of a community. So everything has to be treated just as important. So you want everything to be a bright spot, right? The brighter spots come from, oh, this movie just came out and this actor wants to come. Hey, that's the cherry on top of the sundae. That's the, you know, you won, you did it.
Yeah.
That stuff's always great, but I get more personally the bright spots of, hey, I introduced this guy to a show in Philly, and then he did Boston, and then he did Mega, and now I have him on my whole circuit. You know, he's doing well enough that he's on the whole circuit. I got a girl who does jewelry, and she does the whole circuit. You know, that's the bright spot for me, is if I get to see those same people 5 to 8 times a year and say, glad you're still with it. Or they want more space. I need more space. I've outgrown my space. That's the best problem I could ever hear from somebody. Now, if I could give it to you, it's a completely different story.
Right. Sure.
But knowing that you have expanded to this thing where it's like, wow, all right, this is now not your side hustle. This is your gig.
Okay,
you know
one
what
of
I
the
mean?
most important things that we're hearing now, and with the in the year 2000 of comics, that Wi-Fi, right? Because everybody's selling books and live streaming, and Wi-Fi is such a major thing. Tell us about how dealing with giving people Wi-Fi. What's that like at a con? I mean, that's just got to be hell.
I may add something to that, Rich, before you answer that.
Go for it.
I also want to know your thoughts on people live streaming while they're running their tables.
Okay.
Throw that in there as well.
So giving Wi-Fi at a show is I when I was talking with Stan Lee once years ago.
Hold on, Richard, you dropped his name. Oh, sorry. There you go.
Sorry, thank you. I'm talking to him, and he had just finished photo ops, and he's like, if I die and go to hell, it'll be in photo ops. You know? And that's how I feel about people coming up like, what's the Wi-Fi? And I'm just like, that's when I'm in the 8th circle of hell for eternity. It's going to be at the exhibitor check-in desk trying to explain how for somebody to get the Wi-Fi at a show. Because I'm telling this to people while my laptop's not working either. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, it's all down for. I went from being like, jammers in the building, you guys are crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. To now, like, I'm buying your tinfoil hat and I'm wearing it with you at this point because I don't have an answer. Wi-Fi is very difficult. It's always here's 180,000 people in the building, and you know it's just crashed the whole thing. Happens at every show where there's more than 10 people for some reason. I wish I had a better answer for Wi-Fi. It's a mystery to me. On the second part of it, with people live streaming at their tables, I like it. I actually would love us to do a live streaming area for people if we had stable internet.
We just talked about that.
Yep.
Just talked about that because I have a story and I don't want to mention the name. I might email you the name. I stood there for 15 minutes with 40 books in my hand. And that person never turned. And it wasn't my job to that person to say, hey, I know you're live streaming, but you need to be facing your table.
Sure.
I mean, I literally could have walked away with those 40 books. That person wouldn't even known about it. So there is some current concerns about customer service that if you are by yourself at a table, you probably shouldn't be doing live streaming. You probably should be selling to the public in front of you. And that was kind of more my question. And do you, I know you like it, but are you concerned there is a lack of customer service when that happens?
I think anybody who, I mean, my thing is when I'm filling a show, I am effectively a real estate agent. If you want to put a pool in your backyard, buy the place first, and then you go deal with the zoning permits. I think people who do live streaming should be responsible with how they do those things. There's people that don't live stream and stuff gets lifted from their table all day long.
Sure.
I once had a guy, without naming names, at Mega, and he comes up to me. He's like, "Somebody stole an Amazing Spider-Man 1 from me," you know, and I'm like, "Not a 2025 Spider-Man 1. I mean, like, you know, for anyone in the chat, it's we're talking the original one." And he's just like, "Yeah, I wasn't paying attention," you know. And I'm like, "That sucks." Now you integrate live streaming into that, and I could leave with a whole 8-foot table of stuff at that point if you're not paying attention. So I implore anybody that wants to do live streaming at your thing, come with a staff. You get 2 badges per table. You know what I mean? Bring a friend. So
it would be very cool if there was like some way to create an area of the con where the Wi-Fi is more plentiful, or you have some type of hardwire hookups that specifically is for people that want to do live streaming, and they pay a little extra to be able to have access to that room or those hardwire hookups.
Yeah, I mean, that is something I've been looking at for the past 6 months, where it's like, you know, there are people who come to the show and they're not retailers, but they're whatnot, and they're eBay Live and Facebook Live and Instagram Live, and apparently fucking TikTok has a marketplace and all this stuff too, and all this. So I want to get those people involved as well, where it's like, hey, you could go rent a live streaming room for a bit. You know what I mean? Go rent a room for 2 hours. Go here. You know what I mean? And it's in an ideal world, you build that space and you get it sponsored.
Yes.
Which is like,
you
know.
Hell yeah.
So
have an eBay Live room, a whatnot room, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the type of stuff I think, because there was before the C word in 2020, where everybody would go to shows and online was just kind of starting. Then you hit 2020. Now everybody's just online. Now in 2025, 2026, I see there being a more legitimate hybrid of both things, because everybody's online, but everybody wants to be at the place. And it's not your Instagram post or your after the show TikTok video. It's being able to be in a live streaming area, in a space with a creator selling stuff. That to me is the next evolution of a convention, is an actual designated space, not a guy with his book bag and a selfie stick trying to sell stuff at a table.
Yeah.
Flipping through stuff.
My final question for you is, every city that you go to, let me rephrase this.
Sure.
Orlando did a very good job working with the convention center with you guys. Is that every city that does that, or is Orlando a little bit different?
Everybody's different. You know, every city's different. Orlando got to the point with us when you start pulling in those numbers, 180,000 plus people, right? You're going to be treated a little differently. Like, it goes from you're holding a comic book convention or a signing convention to now you have to have the security, the staffing of, in Orlando, as they described it, of a Miami Dolphins game, right? It is now extra layers of everything because there's so much more of everything.
Yeah.
When I go to a place like Boston, it's a tighter show. It's, you know, I don't, you know, break my knee trying to walk from one end of the hall to the other and stuff like that. Different cities, different rules, same overarching bullet points, right? Some have more flexibility, some not as much. Take, for example, Orlando. For move-in, we have loading docks. Everybody can go to the loading docks and do their thing. You go to Philadelphia, you can drive your car into the show floor and drop off your stuff at the booth. So it's like little changes like that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. It is. It is.
And-
I really
and
go ahead, Emmett.
are the towns putting on events to try to draw the people out?
So again, depends on what market you're in, depends how willing people are. One of the things I've noticed, and this goes for any show for the most part, you don't, like for comic retailers specifically, we'll speak of, you don't get the LCS of that city coming to your store, coming to your show often. They'll sell flyers for you, they'll do ticket sales for you, but they won't come to the event.
Right.
It's hard to pull some of those people out to do more. Actual cities, are they willing to do things? Sure. Boston, we have a thing we do with Fenway where there'll be a Red Sox game playing and it's Fan Expo night. And everybody gets Fan Expo Red Sox hats. We have a thing at Orlando. We have a partnership with Universal where anybody can buy a ticket for like, I think it was like $99 or something like that. You got a ticket to Universal Studios after hours, and you were able to go for like 4 or 5 hours, no lines on the rides. So certain cities will do more, certain cities will do less. I personally would like to see more engagement from the LCSs of the cities I'm in to actually want to do things.
Well, I'll just give you a little piece of advice on that. So we talked about this, I think 2 weeks ago, Brian, where I did like a comprehensive multi-year sales analysis of the 2 weeks before the major convention in your town, your sales, and the 2 weeks after, 2 to 4 weeks after.
Sure.
And it was a 20% reduction the 2 weeks before in sales because your typical customer holds their money back because they're building up their nest egg to be able to drop at that convention.
Sure.
And then it's 20 to 30% for the 2 weeks after. Because they spent all their money at the convention and they're recovering before they come back in. So those local retailers, and I'm not saying that, hey, you know, you're the belle of the ball. When you come to town, you're the Wells Fargo wagon. It's coming down the street, you know. But it might take a little more outreach to make those guys your friends because they know as well as I knew what you coming to town meant to their bottom line. And and I don't know what the answer to that is. Like,
well, I mean, I look at it like now. Somebody earlier, Phil Boyle was mentioned. Coliseum and Comics, very straight shooter, knows what he wants to do. Love Phil. He's just like, yeah, give me my 30 by 30, and I want to be here and this, that, and the other. I'm like, yeah, man, whatever you want to do. You know, I'm not gonna say no to you. You got 750 stores in Florida. I'm not gonna say no to you. Same thing in Texas with Duncanville Books. He'll take up like 14 booths at our Dallas show and stuff like that. In Boston, Newberry Comics, every once in a blue moon will show up with vinyl records. So it's I'm always open to the conversation. I want them to be as open for the conversation as well, because like me and Michael were talking about earlier, there's happy mediums.
Yeah,
but the conversation's got to happen.
I was gonna say, have you ever done? I can't remember what show it was. I used to do this with the artists, but like referral code, like kickbacks, basically. Like if a shop is selling your posting on their socials, and there's a code attached to that they're getting.
We do have an exhibitor rewards program. How well it works or doesn't work, I don't know. That's conversation so far above me. They're cruising into 747 right now. But they do exist. But again, it's just what are you looking for? What do I need out of you? What's the middle ground? Because there's always because it's when you, and without it even getting into the weeds of the brands like CGC and stuff like that. Like when you start talking about brands like that, and Mezco and some of these other people, and even when I was at Midtown Comics, like, you can't be just a vendor. You're too big of a brand. You have to go through a sponsorship team. You have to talk to the higher ups. Like, there's a point when, success coming to a show can be kind of your own enemy if you're trying to come in on the low end of the radar. So it all depends what you want to do.
I remember 2 years ago, what was Jesse? What was the company that made the Keanu Reeves dog comic? Good Boy, Bad Boy.
Good boy.
Source Point.
Source Point. Source Point Press had a giant booth when you walked in.
That was like a
And,
badge sponsorship, right?
They put a huge effort into that, and
Yep.
then poof, they just kind of did.
Well, that was a badge sponsorship with Source Point, right?
They did a badge sponsorship and they did booth space.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But-
there's when I used to run Phoenix Comic Con, I would always tell people, don't tell me how well you did on the weekend. Tell me how well you do by next Saturday, and how many new people are following you on Facebook. How many online sales did you have? How many people, if you wore a store, tell me how many people came into your store, because that's success. If you can take the con and have a great con, but then be successful on the forward on your social world and selling, that's the important part. And maybe a Source Point who just looks at the numbers and nothing else, that's what hurts you.
Well, you got to also
do
do a call to action, Jesse. Every convention I attend that's local to my stores, I'm handing out those $5 off your next $10 purchase coupons. And I actually put a little code on that coupon that I hand out.
So
that tells me
con.
that it came from the con.
Yeah.
So you've got to be able to have that kind of call to action.
Yeah, I mean, anybody that comes to a show, I always have the same type of questions. Are you looking for sales? Are you looking for signups? Are you looking for brand awareness? Are you looking to increase your social media? Like, where do you want to be? What do you want to do? These are the questions that any promoter of any show should ask, because that tells me what you're trying to do. It helps me place you in a proper spot. Any information you give me helps you. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
And without knowing the deal of the Source Point Press stuff, because again, that's a whole different team. That's a sponsorship team. If you're not having, if Source Point or whoever, insert whatever name you want, if you're not telling people what you want and what you're looking for, you're not going to get it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So this is one of those jobs that I have that I tell people, email me as much as you can. Talk to me as much as you can. I talk to at least 1,000 people a month at this point and stuff like that. Keep yourself at the front of my brain. That way, if you want something, if you need something, you can't bother me enough. My job is to be bothered. My job is to talk to you. My job is to make sure you get what you need. And if you're at the end of a show saying you didn't get what you needed, I'm like, well, I got one email from you about a year and a half ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I'm really excited for this year's con season. I think again, congratulations on the first con of the season, MegaCon being such a hit. I think you guys are doing good things, and it's really good to see you jump on shows like this, and to see keeping your finger on the pulse of what people are wanting and what people are collecting, and it's good shit. So I'm glad you jumped in with us. I want to change the subject real quick. I want to get into Michael's head a little bit, because Michael, you just recently kind of closed a big deal. You can talk a little bit about more and the whole massive partnership. Can you give us
I'm
all
a
the
little
deets
nervous
on
what
everything.
what
Yeah.
you're talking about.
Yeah.
But real quick before we jump off that subject, Richard, I would love to talk to you more about some of the ways that Fan Expo can interact with the publishing world. So we should connect after this. I've been doing, like I said, I've been doing shows for conventions since 2003, 2004, and doing about 40 plus shows a year, 70 if you count my other show businesses that I've done. And it's really interesting to I always find it really interesting to talk to showrunners, because I feel like showrunners, like, they have this long, like, bigger picture look at their shows, and then sometimes, like, it's kind of a forest from the tree situation where there's these little things that kind of get missed. But yeah, I would love to have that conversation. But I'm really Bryan, I'm really curious what thing you're referencing. I've had a very busy month since we last
So what are you doing with Lunar? All the announcements coming out, Comics Pro. Can you update us on from the last show to where we are today?
As I think you can't really tell in the video, but I've got more gray in the beard. Haven't
Not
slept
enough.
Yeah. Next show, you and I are gonna be twinsies. No, it's been a crazy, just about 20 something days. I think we spoke the day we launched the press release and the interest form, and just the immediate 24 48 hours interest in the program was incredible, but also kind of scary when you see that many small press and studios scrambling to try to figure out how they're going to kind of survive what's an existential crisis for small independent publishers.
Can you give us an idea of the number? You don't have to be exact, but the number.
I mean, I'll say that it's hard. The number isn't going to really be indicative of a few things. Like, we had a couple hundred people send out interest forms, but some of those were individual creators, some of those were studios with 1 or 2 books, some of those were publishers with 10 or 15 books a quarter. So there was a lot of different size level. And so it was a really great response. I'd say that starting a program out like this, the biggest challenge is you kind of have to start on the smaller end and grow with it, because you don't want to end up doing a poor job by trying to overload the system, so to speak. So we're trying to be really selective about, and I say selective, but it would just having a range is a big priority for us going into approvals. We've already approved a lot of the kind of small to mid-range publishers that I think we're going to be working with initially, and now we're kind of getting into the smaller studios and going through that approval process. And we actually opened up a something for them to be able to submit their entire books to us directly for review. That was something we did for anyone who had filled out the interest form that wasn't a larger publisher. We sent them that link and said, hey, we want to learn more about your books so that we could really see where it fits in and how we can get a really good mix.
Can you explain to the audience who might not know what you're actually talking about, what you're actually talking about?
Yeah. So, I mean, I know you guys have been covering the Diamond bankruptcy. Right. That kind of prompted this kind of crisis mode for a lot of small and independent publishers who didn't already have either dual distribution with a company like Lunar. A lot of those were Diamond exclusive publishers that now we're scrambling to find alternative distribution. Obviously, with I give Lunar a lot of credit because they, I think they acted fast to bring on some of the ones that were doing a lot of books, but they also, I think just like what I was saying, they know that scaling up is something you kind of have to do gradually. And, so there's a lot of publishers that, you can't onboard 100, independent publishers and studios. It's not possible for I think any distribution company to do that with almost no notice. So what we created at Massive Indies was a way for us to take some of that load off of onboarding those publishers, and then becoming sort of a listing service for them, where we take their products and then now we put them into Lunar through our account. So now Lunar's only dealing with one vendor with more books rather than 100 vendors with one book, or a handful of books.
Yeah, it makes it much easier for them to kind of. I think people don't realize how fast this is happening, and how if you're not set up to handle this type of stuff, it's not that easy just to go, okay, we're gonna change our whole business model in a few months to be able to bring on, like you're saying, all this new product, all these new relationships. How are you gonna the thought of holding product, shipping product, distribute, all that stuff is very important. Can you explain how that's going to work with you guys? What if an indie publisher comes and joins the Massive Indies program, what does that mean for them and for their product?
Yeah, so I mean, we it was a big undertaking to try to create a effective, because we could have said, oh, we're going to do this thing and we're going to figure it out as we go, and then fumbled the whole entire thing if we didn't have a solid plan, right? Like that announcing a thing and doing a thing are very different. And for us, we wanted to make sure we did it really well. So the first thing that we did kind of immediately was like figure out, well, what does that look like for a publisher who's going through us? How do we make it as kind of straightforward and simple and fair? Fairness is a big part of it, because anytime you're limiting access to something, because we can't do an infinite number of spots, we had to figure out, okay, well, how do we make this where if you have, so you have 30 publishers on Massive Indies and they want to release certain days, you don't want to have all 30 of those retailers submitting their books on the same date. You don't want the same FOC date for 30 books and then have 4 weeks or 3 weeks where there's nothing. So, the process is, once we've, say we've accepted a publisher or studio into the Massive Indies program, they're given access to basically a calendar of FOCs with slots that they can select from and say, okay, I need this slot for this book coming out in June. They secure that spot. That immediately prompts them to give us the metadata for their title. We do that listing for them. They're able to make their own ad pages that are going to, we're going to assemble into our catalog or our portion of the catalog for Lunar. So they're still having some agency over the look of their brand and what, how they're presenting their stuff, and being able to do things like, preview pages of their books. And so what I'm hoping with that just alone will be effective to make it easy for retailers, to be able to go to one place where they could see a lot of these really high quality indie books. And, rather than looking through a catalog like Diamond had, where it was, you're kind of scouring, you don't really know what some of these smaller, because a Diamond ad page costs, $2,200, $2,400, something like that.
Yeah.
And so, for an independent publisher to buy that so they could show their book a little bit more than just a cover image is absolutely impossible.
Yeah.
For the small press folks. So this is that's one great thing about Lunar. It's a digital catalog. They provide that space. So we're making sure that we can highlight those books a little bit more, prominently, and hopefully boost their sales. And then once it goes through the process, the standard, initial order, FOC, the whole, retailer process, we kind of have two ways that's happening. We have, for instance, we print with Transcon up in Canada for our monthly titles. A lot of the people we're bringing on also print with Transcon. So we're going to be, sharing that cost of shipping books to Lunar from Transcon. And then some folks are going to be shipping books that, say are at their warehouses or at different printers. And we're basically going to, guide them through that process of like, hey, this is what your order was. This is how you do the shipping for this. If you don't already know, you know, we have some things we're going to be announcing in the next week or two on how that'll work. But you know, the goal is to have all of these publishers still functioning like publishers, that we're not trying to take all of that off their plate, but having it be on time, quality, and I think for retailers, the most important part, like books that will sell. You know, that's for us is key.
Yeah.
So can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So did you go to Comics Pro last weekend?
Yeah. We didn't
I mean,
sign
did you
on
go
early.
as a creator or as massive?
We went as massive indies.
Okay.
We basically, I had kind of a goal for myself of I wanted to have the system all set up for the first group of folks that had signed up with us, so that they could get their listings in. So you know, that was kind of like, I was like, if I can get that done, I'm going to go to Comics Pro, and I was able to get it done the night before. So I went down there, and it was an amazing experience. I mean, to say that was I know it's weird because like I've always heard kind of mixed reactions for Comics Pro from publishers. To say that was a highlight of my publishing career is an understatement, because the reaction from retailers for the program that we're doing was incredible. The reaction from other publishers and other creatives was great. You know, I don't think there was we, you know, some of the hardest to please people in the business. I won't name names, but I bet you can guess a few.
Right.
Brian Hibbs.
Yeah.
What?
You know, had good things to say. I mean, there was definitely like, you know, folks like Brian had questions and like, how's this going to work? But overall, there was, I can't think of a single person who said this is bad for the industry or this is bad for retailers. Which
my follow up is how much did it cost for you to present at Comics Pro though?
So we didn't do one of the panel presentations. We did the roundtable.
Okay.
We did the roundtable, and we just spoke with retailers.
Was that for free, or did they charge anything for that?
No, so that was actually because we were such a late addition to the event. We basically came in and we're like, hey, we have this thing that's for independent publishers. We want to be able to talk about if anybody drops out of because their tables were full. They were actually completely sold out.
Yeah.
There wasn't a single unfilled table. And I was like, hey, if anybody backs out and there's an empty table, I would love to be able to talk about this program. And, you know, I went Friday, Saturday, and I think it was Tops or someone had left because they only were there for their presentation day. And so they were nice enough to allow us to sit there and talk to retailers. And, you know, we got to do 2 full days of roundtables, which is even though there were great conversations, it's a lot. You know, every 10 minutes, someone comes up, or not just someone, there's 4 or 5 people that come up. And you only have 10 minutes to really, 1, learn about them, and 2, you know, try to explain a program that's never been done. At least the way we're doing it, it was a lot, but it was a great experience.
So I have a question.
Go ahead.
Does Lunar have the capability to take on all these extra publishers? You were saying that they may have to limit their books. Is there going to be a number? Is there a number where Lunar's saying that's it? That you have a hard number?
They haven't. Okay, so I'll preface by saying this: Lunar has not given us this is the hard number, like this is our capacity. But we had that conversation and came up with a number that we felt was realistic. So we're doing the way we're doing it right, at least for now, until we can kind of see the bandwidth and the capabilities. Is we're doing 10 FOC slots every Monday. For these retailers. So, you know, on a month, so kind of 40 to, it's going to be 40 for the folks.
You said retailers, you meant publishers.
Yeah. Sorry.
Starting on which
retailers. I've been at Comics Pro all week.
Starting on which FOC?
So the 10th is going to be the first one we made available to our first batch. So we already have some.
March.
Yeah. So, and we literally just we're still signing contracts with a lot of folks. So it's definitely going to start slower in March. I think we probably won't have that max hit. I think as we start getting into April, May, I think we'll probably start getting to that max. And for us, the goal is that retailers, and this is what I was saying to the retailers at Comics Pro, this program will like, I can make this program as dialed in as possible. I can make it great for publishers and clean, and I could try to check off every box, but I can only get it to the point where a retailer decides whether or not to support it. So whether retailers support this or not is really the challenge, because if you want to see more indie titles, if you want to be able to have that selection, you have to support these first waves of independent publishers.
Right.
There's no way that they expand this. They allow me to expand this program if, say, book B is selling 300 copies. Like, that just doesn't, it's not worth their time to pick that.
Right.
So
my question is, and I'm trying to figure out the LCS in this conversation.
Yeah.
The LCS is still doing their FOC through Lunar, or are they doing the FOC through you?
They're doing it through Lunar. So this will be all.
They're doing Lunar. So my question is, and I hope this is said the right way, what information can an LCS give you that would help Massive if they're ordering through Lunar?
So there's two things that we're going to try to do. The first one, I think, is, it takes more energy for the retailer, which is, if you have books that you, or say there's a book that you were selling well of and it's not part of our program, reach out to Massive. We're going to be trying to build basically a nominations page where you could say, hey, this book used to sell great at my store. It's not available anywhere now. And if we start seeing a trend of if we get the same book 3-4 times from retailers, and, it'll start to be like, okay, well, why didn't this publisher reach out to us through the indies, information page? Or, maybe, to be honest, we're fallible. Maybe we skip on something that we think is not going to sell well for retailers, but it's actually doing great. And then now we are kind of given that, oh shit, we were wrong on that. We need to readjust our, our dials of what we're accepting.
I do find it, though, it's kind of ironic, though, because you're doing right now what Richard has to do preparing his show in picking and choosing the best people to present in Artist Alley and in small press. Mm-hmm. And you have to now do that exact same thing, but for the smaller press. You do see the irony in that, right?
Well, I don't know about irony, but it's definitely something that I think my experience with doing a lot of conventions actually carries over to this. I think Brian last episode, or last time I was on, asked or mentioned that we do a really great job of finding artists, and artists that were kind of maybe overlooked or not as weren't doing as many big titles. A big part of that comes from from my partner Kevin, being a social media kind of tuned in person who is really aware of up and coming artists, but also from my time as a convention artist. I'd say half the people that we used for cover art or that we gave work to our first few years were all people that I knew from the convention scene, that I knew. I was like, hey, this, there's kind of this, there's a rumored blacklist, I'll put it like that, of publishers not wanting to work with artists that do print walls or, sell unlicensed stuff at cons. And
don't say.
Yeah. Oh my God. But I mean, I think that's become less and less in the last maybe 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
But for me, a big part of that was man, there's people that are incredible that are not getting a shot. They're not, for whatever reason, the bigger publishers aren't giving them a chance to show what they could do. I mean, a great example, we did Hand Over the Hero exclusives for some of our books, which, it blows my mind that no other publisher has done that. And this is a really great artist that is super. You go to any of the conventions, his booth is packed. and he's selling all day long. And when we did that cover, it did great. And we ended up doing, I think, 3 covers with him.
Well, again, that goes to the disconnect between large publishers, and it's funny that you bring up the print wall thing, and with Rich here, that brings me to another question. Is that a thing of the past? I mean, do you guys see very many people doing just print sales at cons anymore? What is the outlook on that? Are artists doing that as much now rather than just getting on a new retailer exclusive variant to sell at a con?
Still very much around. Also, depending who you are, I think it also we've weeded out a lot of print wall people because of now policing and trying to distinguish AI art, which is its own monster.
And that was my next question. Yeah. What's Fan Expo's stance on AI art?
So we've been tossing around ideas of things. There is no official one. So it's more or less up to the discretion of the exhibitor sales floor manager, which would be me for my shows. And I've been to some of the other shows. There's George and Alex and what have you. But all right.
Sorry about that. My bad.
And getting into the weeds a little bit about who sells what at shows, right? So to me, AI art, you have no place in Artist Alley at all. If you're in the retail section, what's the difference between you and someone laser engraving a Superman logo on glassware?
Right.
So to me, it's like if you're going to pay retail costs and you just want to, here's a few things. If you are selling stolen art from somebody who is currently in Artist Alley, am I going to kick you out of the show? I'm definitely going to have a talk with you and be like, stop selling that immediately.
Why not kick them out?
It's a tough thing because also AI is also advancing a lot faster than me. I'm getting older. AI is just getting better. So it's a lot harder to try and tell the difference of things. It was a lot easier when all their fingers were mangled, and now it's like, but you see a lot of these people who turn out to be AI artists, and
Matina.
There's no way you draw 17 different art styles.
Matina was set up at the entire Fan Expo 2 years ago.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing with Matina, and I've known Matt for years. I think he's he's a phenomenally talented artist.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I've gotten pieces of art from him. That man can draw. I don't know where it came in, where it's like, let's run this through an AI program or something. Ain't my conversation to have. Hopefully he'll have that conversation one day. But it's really bad when it's somebody who actually can do it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It would be a lot different if, like me, I could draw a stick figure and for some reason he still looks like he has a broken leg. So I'm not one to critique people's style.
No.
But AI art.
That's where the fuzzy line really is, though. I mean, where you have somebody as great as he is, and he's an amazing guest, and then you find out possibly this taints this. But if he called you up tomorrow and said, "Hey, I want to come in and sell a whole bunch of prints," that puts it kind of in that zone where you're like,
well, yeah, it's one of those things, and anybody that gets found out as like AI art is like, you can't be an Artist Alley. Artist Alley is for creators who create.
Yeah, but
typing a few keywords into a computer, ain't it?
Can they be in the vendor hall though? I mean, like that's the thing I don't understand is like, if you are against AI art, if you think AI art should not be in a convention for creative endeavors,
sure,
then why not just have a policy that says if you have AI art, you'll be removed from the show, and you don't necessarily have to, have a trial there of like,
sure,
it will discourage enough people if it's actually a policy. But if it's not even a policy.
Real quick, it's not my policy to enforce. That's a top-down decision, and also like, it's no different than the 4 lightsaber vendors because none of them are Lucasfilm approved.
Well, and I want to go one step further.
I think that's different.
I want to go
Yeah.
one step further, though. There are AI witch hunts, and we've watched a lot of them over the last couple of years. Who is the arbiter? Who gets to burn the witch?
Well, I mean, what I was saying is
who
I
gets to
think that's
decide who
actually,
the witch is and who gets to burn the witch.
But I think what I was trying to say is like, if you don't have a policy at all, that there's no like, hey, if we figure out that it's AI art, you'll be asked to leave. That will, I think, deter some of the AI artists from even applying.
And we have done that, and definitely now we are better at knowing who's doing what. Like if you guys all walked around, like if you went to MegaCon and got to see it, you did not see much of any. And if there was, it was so low key because we are just trying to be as on top of it. It's a lot easier to stop it from coming in the door than trying to catch it after the fact.
Well, I'll tell you what I find very interesting is that, you know, you having this outlook on it is very interesting to me. I think it's a positive thing because it's starting to happen all over the place, not just you know, like you said, you're noticing it at cons. Publishers, you know, we talked to Philip Sablik of Ignition Press, and we asked him straight up, "What is your thought on AI art?" And he said, "Absolutely none of it." And you know, Michael, what is your thought on AI art? I believe we asked you, but since we have you here again, what is your thought as a publisher?
One of the things I made sure was in our contract for the massive indies is that there's zero AI art allowed. If you don't tell us about it and we find out, you're off the program immediately. Your book's not going to be, I don't care if your book had 15,000 sales. If it turns out it was drawn by a machine, it's gone.
Brian, that video I sent you, I just watched that today and it blew my mind. If you could just play that last little 45 seconds at the 3-minute 43 second. So the New York Times did an interview with Hank Azaria, and they fed his voice into the AI generator, and then they fed his characters' voices to try to replicate Hank Azaria's voices. And they all came back as bad as you would expect. You know, like his Homer was, you know, or his Mo was way off. But he ended this video with, I think, one of the most prescient comments about AI anything. And it's kind of Jesse and my take on the entire situation. So if you could play that, Brian.
Yeah. Here we go. Let's take a listen.
People are going to listen to and enjoy and watch what they like, and they're not going to care whether AI generated it or a human generated it or some combination of the two. Right now, what AI generates by itself as mode of bartender or anything else isn't going to cut it. But if it does start to cut it, people are going to listen to it and they're going to be grateful that it's so readily available. Look what happened, you know, to the music industry. I cried a tear because the record industry reinvented itself. I got to listen to all the music for free all of a sudden. So I don't think people are going to feel much differently about any of this.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and what is
I
also
mean, that guy is huge, and you know he's had this conversation with hundreds of other actors, hundreds of other creators, and that's where he has come down on this topic.
Well, you have to be open to the conversation, and by this is the conversation. What I mean when I say this, Michael. You said that if AI art is used or AI is used, they're out of this. Is there anything that they can use AI on to make their job easier? I mean, like advertisements. Jesse talks about advertisements in comics. Sometimes we'll use AI or AI art. You know, processes, making processes easier using AI. Is there a window or an opportunity to say, okay, what if I use it here? Is that okay?
So, I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways you could use AI, right? Like if you're using AI art to get the starting structure of like, this is just kind of a, you know, you say you're going to write a write up for something, a press release or something, and you're using AI art or AI to ChatGPT to kind of figure out, okay, what's a better way to structure this? And then you rewrite the thing in your own voice. That's a way to use a tool to help you kind of collect your thoughts. But if you write a press release and then you just put that out, this thing this computer is generated has nothing that comes from you as a creator. And now extrapolating that out to like art, if you're using it for reference, like you're like, okay, I need to draw a scene with buildings and I'd really like to have good reference for these buildings, but I don't want to go out there and shoot photographs or, Google search buildings. And now you're saying, okay, let me look at some building reference and then sit there and without light box tracing or dropping it into Photoshop, and you're just using that as a reference. I think that's a acceptable way to use AI in a way that is a little bit more ethical. Now, if you're taking that AI picture of a building and you're dropping it into Photoshop and you're changing some levels so that it looks like inked artwork and it's not, that's just plagiarism. That's just you just plagiarized a machine, and that's not, to me, that's not art. To me, that's not creative. So for me, I don't want anything to do with that. Yeah. That's, I think, where I fall in. I do think that we are not going to be able to stop it. What you're saying, like there's not going to be a way to keep this from causing people to lose creative jobs. Right. Just, it's already happened. It's already gets out of the bag. The only thing we can do is for folks like myself and Richard to be able to say, hey, you know what? We are not okay with contributing to this. We won't allow it into our shows or our comics. It's going to get into somebody's comics, and maybe they'll make a lot of money. But
and how many comics are going to start with AI? Dear AI, I want to come up with a really new idea for a comic book.
Impossible.
No,
it can't do new. It can't do new.
It can.
It can.
It can't do new.
I'll say that people can't do new. Like everything, you know what I'm saying? Like everything that every comic out there is this meets this.
Yeah. How many elevator pitches are? Yeah, I'm going to do a Superman comic, but he's going to be evil and he's going to have a son, and he, oh, I'm sorry, that was Robert Kirkman's elevator pitch for Invincible.
Yeah.
But
based on somebody else's creation, he said, I'm going to twist this, and I'm going to twist this, and I'm going to twist this.
Computers have no emotion or empathy.
They don't need to.
Or bad days. Art comes from most art comes from places.
I think you're being very naive, Emmet. You're being very naive.
I think you'll always be able to pick out AI. If you have an eye for art and you look at it, you'll know.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say
it'll have no soul.
As someone who looks at a lot of art, I've seen AI art that's legitimately better than human art. Like it's a better, like I've seen ones that are better quality, but does that matter? Because like it's the end result's not, in my opinion, isn't what matters. I mean, I know that's like what most things are judged by, but by that standard, it's like, AI comics would be way more successful. They'd be super cheap, and you probably can get every type of story you'd ever want. But that's not the point. You want is to get a window into a creator's, creativity. And people don't want to read my books because of necessarily the end quality, right? That may be the thing that gets them excited when they first read it, but then they're going to be invested in the characters. They're going to be invested in like the style of writing that I have.
But that's what happened at the music industry when Napster took their product and gave it out for free, and then they had to give up all those rights to iTunes at pennies on the dollar, and they realized, okay, when we release something, it has to be all of these bells and whistles to buy the physical, and we're going to have to go out on tour, and we're going to have to charge a lot of money for every ticket to make up for what we just lost to the computer.
Well, that's the artist doing 40 shows a year.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is that's you can sit around, and think that you can spot fakes, or you can work twice as hard to prove you're not a fake. Right. You have to do sketches at shows. You have to do, the panel where Richard has you drawing Godzilla eating a hot dog in person to make sure you can prove that your Godzilla eating a hot dog print over at your table is your art.
But I think it's also making an assumption that artists are making enough money to do that, right? Like, I mean, I think there's definitely are artists that are making enough money to do that, but I mean, if you're you look at like the especially interior artists that are doing a book a month type work, those obviously I don't think anybody's questioning those guys. So I guess it comes down to like, okay, if you're questioning the art of someone who's posting something online versus something that's being sold.
I mean, right? We brought up Matina. Matina had money. He didn't need to do it. Matina had talent. He didn't need to do it.
Yeah, but you can only make a certain amount of art, right? And if somebody says, I want another cover, he saw a shortcut. Right?
I don't know.
He could get paid. It's another
Alex
payday.
Ross has 5 covers a month for Marvel. And I've seen Alex Ross do the art. That's
because Alex Ross is rich.
Yeah.
My point is like talented. I don't think saying like artists should have to go out there and prove that he's the artist by doing sketches and conventions. If they want to do that, great. But I think that shouldn't be the bar.
Eventually, AI art will be integrated into comics, and it's not going to be an artist decision. It's going to be a publisher decision.
Great point.
And it's all about how they responsibly integrate it in a way where it's not. I mean, there's been my friggin' phone has AI. All right, they signed off James Earl Jones to be Darth Vader forever. The whole beginning of Secret Invasion, like it's already like creeping its way in. Yeah. And people are calling it out now, but there'll be a time when they'll be like, "This is just how it is now."
Yeah, they won't care.
Yeah. I think so retail is based on I've been doing this for 43 years. Even at Nordstrom, we wanted to know the consumer behavioral status of a customer and what they will buy without actually getting any info. So if you were to look at a $2,500 alligator shoe, do you really need any more info other than, what part of Italy did this come from? Was this alligator part of a crocodile family, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And so this is what happens in a comic book store. People walk up to the counter, or they walk up to the new issue stand, or they walk anywhere in the store. No one walks up right now, I'm just talking about right now, and says, can you point out which ones are AI? Because I don't want to buy those.
Yeah.
The consumer right now just wants to buy comics. Yeah. So AI is a challenge because creators, cons, publishers, distributors are so focused on it, but a regular customer technically doesn't care.
And I mean, honestly, Jesse, if a new publisher, and obviously not at Massive, obviously not set up at Fan Expo, if a publisher called you up tomorrow and said, I have a whole new line of comic books, they cost $1 each, I sell them to you for $0.25, and you get to make 75 cents on every comic. And they look amazing. And they look amazing.
Right. Should a comic, if it is AI, state in there it's AI? I think that should be put in the comic, in the Disha area or something like that. But the consumer, the final end, the person that pays your power bill, that's the person that you have to watch. And when consumers start saying to you, hey, is this book AI? I don't want anything on my pull list that is AI. That's when you start to react in a retailer world. But in a publisher world, in a con world, I understand it. So
I never surrender. It's never coming to my shop. I don't care.
The next generation of consumers, AI is part of their life already.
Oh yeah, sure. They don't know
for
the
them,
difference.
It's going to be no different than anything else. It'll be like buying music. It'll be like going to a movie. Movies, they're using AI already. They've been using CGI for years and all that stuff. Yeah, the next consumer, if anybody wants Batman, they're not going to care who drew it, who wrote it. They're going to just be like, that one. And they're not going to care. You could put an AI stamp on it.
But
we've already played the retailers. But we've also already played the slippery slope where we're allowed, to fill in the hair color with a template that MacBook decided to put on a paint shop file. They've got Todd McFarlane drew every web, and these guys aren't drawing every strand of hair.
Mm-hmm. Yep. there's a difference between a new tool that you're learning to manipulate, and I mean, I was someone who was early on in Photoshop coloring back in the day, right? And yeah, it's I remember people saying, "Oh, Photoshop, you color your comics with Photoshop, like that's cheating."
Yeah.
Right? There's a difference between going from using a light box to scanning a page, than from some physically doing the act and having a computer do all the creative parts, and then at the end saying, "Oh, I'm an AI artist." You didn't do anything.
Right.
You didn't. You
Right.
maybe you wrote some words into a.
But Greg
prompt
Land is
in
still
the
doing
prompt.
covers.
Yeah.
Greg Land is still doing covers.
Yeah.
And he's the most notorious light boxer.
Yeah, but that's light. I mean, as far as like light boxing, like using it as a tool, or like stealing someone else's.
Oh, he stole full on. You've never heard of?
I mean, I've heard stuff, but like I was saying more like the tool aspect.
He light boxed porn and turned it into Marvel.
Hey, Rich, I want to ask you this question. Do you guys have to approve every exclusive at a Fan Expo that has your logo on it?
Yep, I approve those.
Okay.
That's important.
So-
That's very important.
Yeah.
Man, I'm glad I heard that. I'm glad you asked that.
Yeah, no. The process is, if anyone wants to use our logo, I need to see the finished cover, and based on printing deadlines, if you can, show me a mock-up with where you want our logo to be on the book. Some people want it on the front still, some people on the back, but I need to see who the cover's by. I need to see what the subject matter is. I've definitely have come across times where there are people that want to use, especially MegaCon, they want to use the logo, but they're not even at the show. They're saying they have a MegaCon exclusive, but they're just not even at the show. So it's like, no, you can't. It depends on how graphic the book is. That'll determine if you get a logo. But if somebody comes to me like, I have a Spider-Man by Mark Bagley, for this issue, it's like, yeah, go nuts, have a great time. So it's definitely like vetted the whole way through. Every exclusive that you see on the floor, I see it and have to be like, yeah, you can use the logo.
Yep, that's
very good.
Very good.
Hey, before I want to ask Rich one more question. Sorry.
Sure.
You guys did something that impressed the hell out of me 2 years ago.
Okay.
You had Gina Carano at your convention, and unapologetically.
Yep.
And you had her throughout the year, despite a lot of online controversy about it. Can you walk us through that and tell us kind of where you guys stand with that?
It's just one of those things where it's, hey, the guest wants to come to the shows. And if there's one thing I've learned about controversy in any aspect, whether it be comics or the entertainment industry, people will come, they'll show up, they'll
She
come
never
see
not
what's
had
going
a
on.
line.
She's never not had a line. She's a perfectly fine individual. I've had a quick conversation, very sweet. It's just, and 90% of the people who start the controversy and want to start yelling and stuff like that, they're going to do one of two things. They're going to not go, or they're going to go and hop on the line.
Or funnier yet, they were never going to go.
Yeah, they were never going. We have guests like that all the time. MegaCon this year, we had Mel Gibson.
Yeah.
Controversial figure, but to the masses at large, he's still Braveheart and Lethal Weapon. So
Mad Max.
It was amazing.
Mad
That
Max.
was a big deal. That was a big deal having Mel Gibson at the con this year. A lot of people talked about that in a major way.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is like, doesn't matter how controversial you are, it's what are you tied to? Because people will overlook that stuff every time.
Oh yeah, sure, sure, definitely. When is your next con? The con that you actually run?
My next con is Fan Expo Philly in May.
Oh God, and you got the Eagles World Championships.
It's a lot better than when they lose. I mean, listen, whether they lose or win, Philadelphia will destroy that city, no matter what.
And they'll still all be lined up for a Geno's at 2 a.m.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, being right across the street from Reading Terminal is one of the greatest delights of a show I get to enjoy.
It's the best.
Yep.
That's
Have you ever
great.
been to Bomb Bombs?
No, I haven't. What is that?
Oh, it's the #1 Philly Italian restaurant you have to go to.
Okay.
If I come to Philly this year, you and I have to go to Bomb Bombs.
I will go. I'll have a ticket waiting for you.
All right.
I used to go to Wizard World Philly. It was my favorite show. Better than
I used to love Wizard World Philly.
And then Wizard World's just lost their direction. They started making it like so like you couldn't look at the stars. They were jumping up and down in front of you, and it really went downhill fast. But it used to be great.
I mean, Wizard World Philly was like really like one of my gateway drugs into conventions and stuff like that. And then towards the end, like I remember one of the booths set up there was selling gutters for your house, and I'm like, like that can't be good.
I'll be slightly controversial because I never am. When Jareb left to go run his Ultimate Fighting Championship branch off thing, it was a lot like when Steve Jeppy left Diamond to a whole bunch of people to run it, and you could see the flaws without the captain at the ship immediately.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is something I'll say about the comic industry as a whole, and not tied to anyone specifically. It's an industry that's not really good at training a successor. There are gatekeepers, and the minute that person is gone, everything crumbles instantly.
Falls apart. Yep.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the biggest problems is for as big of a community the comics industry says it is, wants to be, pretends to be, it's very much got everything that is worth knowing is held here, and it goes with them.
Back to my Gary Reed rules. Share your knowledge and experience freely. And that's the way I've always conducted my life. I don't care. I just dropped a video tonight, and one of the comments was, I just opened a store because of your videos. I'm opening it on April 1st, and I'm just like, God, that just fills me with like so much love. Yeah. That somebody's taken my videos and I watch Emmet's videos, and I'm just like, oh, Emmet watched something I said and implemented it into his store. And I just love that.
Yeah, I mean, this is a industry of education if people are willing to listen. And you got to be willing to listen, but the way you teach is everything.
Yeah, great point. That's a great point. Yeah, amen, man. Amen.
Yeah, I mean, it's why.
Are you saying I'm a horrible teacher? What?
I'm not saying nothing, but it's one of the main reasons why, for example, AI, going back to that, has gotten into everything else in the world, but this is still one of the few industries where it's like, no, because everybody still wants to have their hand in this, and everybody who's part of this, everybody on this call, everybody who's ever worked at a shop, at a show, makes comics, whatever, there is a sense of ownership. There's an imprint that you have on it. It's what means everything to you. It's legacy, right? Something that a computer can't do. And it's because of years of being at a shop and teaching that next person what you're reading, what you're buying, and then that person will then buy that. And then it's just passing that back and forth.
And that's that's exactly what the YouTube space that Bryan's created. He talks about new artists, talks about hot books, talks about great storylines. And that feeds an audience that's hungry for some sort of knowledge beyond what they're getting from a Diamond Previews catalog or whatever.
Yeah, I find myself in the camp of feeling like there is no wrong way to enjoy a comic. If you want to read it and read an entire run, if you have your preferred writer or artist, if you want to just get books and you like the art, you want to get it signed, you want to get it graded, you want to put it on a shelf, there is no wrong way to enjoy this as long as you are enjoying it.
Yep.
Amen. I want to ask Michael a couple of questions from the chat. People are asking if they are a small press creator. Is there what's the best way to get in touch with you? Is it through the Massive Indies sign up list? Are you guys still taking newcomers? What's the deal with that?
So yeah, if you go to massiveindies.com, we still have the interest form up. We're still actively going back to that, and anytime we see more people put their links on there, basically what we're doing is we're reading, a little bit about the folks who are interested on that sheet itself, getting an idea of like how many books they're looking to do. Usually, I would say anybody who's going to do that, make sure you put a website or at least a social media link. One of the kind of the most disappointing things, or the hardest thing, is when we see something on there and it's clear that the person cares about their project, but then there's no link for us to even see what it looks like. So it's like, well, I can't do anything with that.
Yeah.
So make sure you have a link ready, even if it's just a single page with images from the book. Doesn't need to be fancy. We just need to be able to see what it is. So that's step one. Go to the interest form. We've been sending out the link to anyone who fills out the interest form for the full book submission page. We don't want to get overwhelmed with that, so we haven't made it like a public thing in a press release yet. So that's really the best way to do it.
I think that's one of the most important things that we've kind of learned here tonight from the guests is that if you want to take part in whatever they're offering, whether it's being a part of Fan Expo, conventions, being a part of Massive Indies, be prepared to show them something specific about what you're offering, right? And so many people don't do that. That's very important, and I would suggest people really pay attention to that. Rich made some great comments about what he looks for, and when people want to get on that list of being a retailer at one of the cons. And Michael has also just explained that how important it is to show what you're working with and what you're doing.
And make sure to put interior artwork for your books. That's another one. It's so hard to judge they don't judge a book by a cover. It's impossible to judge a book by the cover because half the time it's not the same artist.
Jesse, what was that publisher about 8 or 9 years ago that had the most amazing covers and the most shit-tastic interiors? And they had like 8 or 9 books at the Diamond Retailer Summit that went.
Oh yeah.
That went like. I can't remember. It was. Yeah, it was so like, oh wow, this cover looks amazing, and then you open it up and you're like, did your children draw the inside?
Yeah.
That's.
Do you know who I'm talking about, Emmet? It was like
Listen,
up something.
I don't want to.
Up something.
Well, the only one person I could think of was Phantom, but they only did one title.
Yeah, no, it wasn't them. No, it was. I can't remember what it was, but it was just like you had a really good idea for covers, and then you just shit the bed on interiors, and they didn't sell past one issue because the fans that bought them, the customers that bought them, read them.
I think that's actually the bigger problem in the industry is that, right? Is the like for a while now we've really just retailers have only been given the covers to make judgments on.
Yeah.
And it's a really easy way to game the system if you have really great covers in the previews catalog, and it looks like you've put together this really professional thing, and then no one finds out that it's not until it's on the shelf. And then when you have someone buy that, or not buy it really, then it becomes a retailer problem because now you have dead dollars on your shelf because you got duped. And now when you have a cover that's actually good and the interiors are good, you can't trust it. So it becomes this. That's why I actually really like the one thing I was most excited about with the Lunar listing was being able to do interior pages in the catalog without having to pay thousands of dollars to do it. to be able to. I mean, because it blows my mind. This is one thing. Like I didn't have problems with Diamond as far as like the way they ran their business. They always treated us really well. The thing that drove me nuts is they had this catalog, and they never made it easy for retailers to show more of the books, to like things like email blast. That should have just been part of every retailer's options. They should have had digital catalogs where, that were a little bit more accessible, because ultimately that's help sell books. If I can show you more pages of a book and actually, so you could talk about it before, like if someone comes into your store and you're like, man, I read the preview for, this guy's next book. It's awesome. You should put it on your pull list. I think it fits with what you like that gives you the ammunition to make sales. But if it's just, we're just going based off of cover art, like it's going to be all over the place quality wise.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure.
Well, cover art, Brian, we got Sveta to do a cover for Detective Kaiju. We just
amazing. Amazing. I love
fans,
Sveta. I love Sveta, and I've been talking with her and Adam recently, so we got some cool things going on.
Awesome.
Hopefully with them soon. I think that's very important, and that's one thing that I would hope that both of you guys do more of is, one of the important things about keeping your finger on the pulse about what's going on is to have those up and coming artists that are so hot right now that they should be at these cons. A perfect example of that, we talk about Mark Spears a lot here on this channel, but so many people in the comics world still, these big publishers, they don't even know who Mark is, yet alone trying to get him at a con to come and sign for them, and so many people are asking for that guy to be at a con to sign books. So that's the important stuff to me going forward is putting some spotlight on some of those amazing, new artists in the game. But that being said, I want to thank our two guests. I want to thank Rich and Michael, and I want to ask one last time for Emmet, Jesse, and Dennis, if you have any last questions for them before.
Yeah, I have 3 things for Rich. First of all, when you use an analogy in Orlando, it's not Miami Dolphins, it's Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So let's kind of get that aligned a little.
I'm saying what they said. All right. I didn't say that.
I'm like, man, I can't believe I invited you to the show. The second thing is that sock guy you had at the show. I got better socks than him. So that's the second thing.
Conversation for later, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Because
This is what Brian looks like every time I talk.
Yeah. And then the third thing is we'll talk about, I really want to talk to you about that separate area for live streaming.
Sure.
And converse about that. But, I've known you for a long time. You continue to move that bar one step higher. And I know you probably have a lot more ladders to go up there. So just keep on doing the good work. I'll definitely see you in Philly for sure. And thanks for coming on the show. So.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. You guys got anything more for them before we let them go and finish out the night? Good stuff.
All right.
Rich, Michael, both of you guys are both welcome anytime. There's always a seat for you guys, and we're going to be bugging you guys to fill the seats at some point again. So thank you so much for both of you guys jumping on tonight.
All right. Thank you.
All right, guys. Talk to you soon. Yep. All right. Before we call it a night, you guys, there
I want
is
to say
something.
a couple things. But
there's so much news.
I have a few things too.
Yeah.
One of the things that I do want to talk about is I want to talk about Diamond. There is the talk about Diamond and everything coming to the end. I know there's been some news from the Jeppy side, and does anybody want to kind of talk about that, Jesse?
Yeah.
Dennis?
So I think what happens is you want to fight a good fight. You're always fighting a good fight for your company, no matter what. Trust me, I've been on times with my company where I just didn't know if I could make it to the next morning. But you fight a good fight and you find a way out. But there will come a time, and the percentage is pretty high in businesses, where the fight is not worth it anymore. It's ripping you apart personally. The business is, you can't even think about. So Josh Jeppy put out his final farewell letter publicly, and that's therapeutical for him. I think it gets it out there. He's able to express all these years. You got to remember, this guy grew up in comics. It's not like he was hired. No, he grew up in comics. And for him to get out there and really talk to the public about meeting people, meeting publishers, just everything that he has been able to accomplish over this time was very, very good to see. Now, on the flip end, it also tells you that they aren't going to be bidding for Diamond, right? When there's a bankruptcy, folks, you can bid. You have the option to bid for your company back. That is over. They have said it's time to move on. And I think that's a great thing. We will remember the Jeppies, and we will forget Diamond.
Yeah.
That's just how it's going to work.
Yeah.
Well, my take on that is like the day he was born, his father was the king of comics.
Yeah.
You know, so this has to be extra tough for him. You know, same for my children. You know, if I had lost this, where would they be at? You know?
Yeah.
But yeah.
I
I
didn't see that the Overstreet Access app on the, unless that comes with Overstreet the book. I don't think it does. So
far, there's been one thing that and this was a real mind blower here. The list of all of the websites and web domains that they owned. I don't know if Diamond had their own personal server that they could just keep adding this stuff and whatever, but the renewal fees on this shit had to be able to put most companies into bankruptcy.
Yeah, it's the renewal fees. Now, keep in mind, every major company does this. They go out and they just start buying everything. We used to have a team at Nordstrom trying to figure out, if you didn't know how to spell Nordstrom, how would you spell it, right?
Yeah.
And then they would go buy that, and then they would go buy the acronym. And then they would say, well, we got Nordstrom shoes, you got Nordstrom T-shirts, you got so you go out and you buy this. So for anybody looking at all those things that popped up, there's tons of them. The value on those is get rid of them. There's no value there. You're not going to be able to resell them. You're not going to be able to use them. What are you going to use them for? So it's very interesting when you look at your assets that are sold to the public and then assets that are kept within the business. And trust me, right now, if you were to put a bid in for Diamond and not get any assets with it, it's not worth anything, because you can't use the name. I can't call Dennis up, and I can't call Emmet up and say, hey, this is the new Diamond. You're going to say, no, not interested. So you got to change the name. You have 168 employees in the home office. If you look at the main page for Diamond Daily, there's like 11 employees that write Diamond Daily. That's crazy. That's nutty. So in this case, I would say they do have to leave some assets. Now, you got to keep in mind, not all those assets are going to sell that they are selling public either. Some of those assets are then get $1 bid. And of course, the judge is going to say, no, we can't sell that for $1. And that will float back in. There was a question about the 4 consignment collections purchased. Right? If you look at down, there's $217,000 in consignment purchases that they got.
That's what they bought it for.
Yeah. Oh, is that what they bought it for? $217,000.
Yeah. You got to figure, because that's what it's on the balance sheets as. And if they spent that much money, it's probably worth $1 million.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of things going on. Listen, at the end of the day, it's time that we move on. The talk has been going on since this has been announced. Once the Jeppies walk out, I think if you're a team member at Diamond, You're probably putting in resumes about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. I'm going to tell you right now, and I say this every single week, stores that owe Diamond money, don't think you're going to get away without paying those bills. You're going to have to pay those bills. It's going to be to the new person. It's going to probably be to a third party.
Honestly, I think those bills are just going to get sold off as a piecemeal piece.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It'll be a third party, right? And they will buy that. And
are we putting in bets on what that total is? Because I did some math, and I think I know. I have a ballpark of what I think it is.
Well, I think what you got to look at is you have to look at current past due and past due from people that aren't there anymore. So if you put in those numbers, what they owe is probably close to what stores, businesses, big boxes have owed them. What you have 18 million? Yeah, I would say it's a little bit more than that. I would say you're probably around 22 to 25 million in back pay. And that I'm just just an educated guess based on everything I know.
But that number, there are bean counters and collection agencies that know to the penny of what they're going to get out of that 18 million.
Yeah, they're drooling.
Yeah. And keep in mind, this is not returnable product. So no one's then call you up and say, listen, you owe Diamond, $11,000. We want that product back. They don't want any of the product back.
And every one of those has a personal guarantee from the retailer, which means their house is on the line, their cars are on the line, their bank accounts are on the line.
I would be careful when you say that, because if you're an LLC, a C corp, an S corp, it might be a little bit different.
Remember when you signed that first Diamond, I pulled up my contract. I pulled my 20-year-old contract. You are personally guaranteeing. There's no corporate shield. There's
if you have a good lawyer, trust me, you'll get out of that. So. But anyways, no, it's a valid point though, right? It is a valid point. And again, if you owe them $11,000, the only thing they can do is put a lien on your house when you sell your house, right? And when you sell your house, the $11,000 then go off. So at the end of the day, though, that's where we are in this world. So if you look at Rich and you look at Fan Expo, you say, how does Diamond affect Fan Expo? I don't know if it does.
It doesn't.
Right?
You know why? Because this industry abandoned all of that level a long time ago.
Right.
I mean, I can't remember the last time. I can actually, if I really put my brain to it, but I remember IDW, Dark Horse, DC, and Marvel all being at the 2009 Wizard World. That's the last time the big four and big five and Image were all there. And then one by one, they all started dropping out after that.
Oh, yeah.
They somehow abandoned that. And guess what? We were still at over 2,000 stores at that time. Yeah. We were still at 150,000 top 10 books a month.
Right. You know what the biggest value for any company to look at right now, and it has to deal with Diamond, but has nothing to do with Diamond. What do you think that is?
Repeat the question.
So what is the biggest asset Diamond has, but they actually don't own, that everybody's buying for right now?
The email lists?
No, not their email list. San Diego Comic-Con spot.
Oh,
look at that space. Oh my gosh. That is
there's no subleasing, so that space just
it's done. Yeah, it's whoever's then get that. And New York Comic-Con. So retailer summits really didn't matter. Me and Dennis were at the last one. It was
Jesse, do you remember? Hold on, let me just. This came to me last week when I was talking to somebody else about this, and you and I had a very long conversation about this. And this didn't even hit our radar. Remember when Diamond changed their business model for how to do the variants at San Diego Comic-Con?
Oh, yeah,
they were going to sell direct to the consumer rather than to the retailers.
Yeah.
We didn't even think that was the reason. This was the reason they were doing that.
Yep, absolutely.
That was how smooth that it was.
Yeah.
Like that you and I didn't sniff that, oh, wait, no, they need to get some cash in hand fast.
Yeah. And and I had asked that question, how does a distributor, a wholesaler sell retail? That doesn't even make, that doesn't
not just retail, but premium retail.
Yeah, premium
$20
retail.
a book.
Exactly. And so it's
and I think, but here's the thing, I think the publishers knew, and that's why they let them do that then.
Well, I'm sure the publishers had some sense of it, but so when you look at, someone asked about Free Comic Book Day, that is an asset that is up for sale. That is you then have to pay some money. You can't have anything to do with it this year, so you then have to ride that money. That's you then make about $800,000, $1 million a year on that project.
Not just that, Jesse, but we're still talking at April 1st. So all bids, nothing is going to be sold until April 1st. And then there's a transfer period where the things kind of go into escrow and
60 days minimum.
So even if you bought Free Comic Book Day, by May 1st, you might not have the keys.
Yeah.
You might not
you won't have anything to do with it this year. I think that's already done.
And to me, Free Comic Book Day is that ship in a perfect storm just spinning around every wave that hits it right now.
Right.
They're like, I just got a notice that 2 books aren't going to be available through Diamond, and they're now available through Lunar.
Yep.
And they're no longer available in single issue quantities, but they're now bundled issue quantities. And it's just like, dude, that's 2 months away. We're supposed to be receiving these.
Right. FCBD is now COD only. So you can't put it on terms.
I love it.
Emmet, tell me, because, I'm not doing it this year. How important is Free Comic Book Day to you? What is its value?
It's not the very best day of the year, but it's probably number 2, like cash through the door.
Right. Yeah. So is it $1 to get 5? Is it $1 to get 10? Does it stand in that realm?
Well, I'd say like they cost about 30 cents average. I'd probably say double that.
Okay.
So for every 2 books I buy, I make 5. So 60 cents to $5.
Yeah. I looked at it. I have always looked at it a different way. The event costs me around $1,500 staffing, free books, all of that jazz. And if I can double that, that's what that event meant to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Which means I paid for the event and I made an extra $1,500 for the time and trouble of doing it.
And here's the crazy part. Here's a number I'm going to throw you. So as one of the largest Free Comic Book Day stores, Free Comic Book Day cost me anywhere from $7 to $10,000 to do, because we're 72 hours, right? All this stuff, whatever, that's immaterial. In all that 10 years of doing Free Comic Book Days, you know how many box holders I picked up in 10 years?
All of them?
One.
No, you did it wrong then.
Yeah,
you did it wrong.
One box holder. So in my case, yes, I was doing it wrong. Why? Because I was only focused on money that weekend. So that $10,000, I had to do $21,000.
So
and there was no one at the counter saying, "Hey, who do you have your box with? Hey, I see you bought that. Do you want a pool box holder?"
We had so many internal promotions. Our first year, 2005, this kid came in with his mom, and it was our first year. And we had just opened March 31st. And here's a month later, we're doing Free Comic Book Day. And kid and his mom come in. He's like 13 at the time. And, oh, yeah, you get 10 comics, pick them out there and tell them what you got. We had Superman and Supergirl running around. We had Stormtroopers and all that fun stuff. And the kid came in a week later, filled out a pull sheet. And then, let's see, that was 05. So it had to be somewhere around 2010. And the mom and then actually the kid started working for me. You know, he came in every week for 5 years. The mom came in on Free Comic Book Day and said, "Happy anniversary, Dennis." And I'm like, "Oh, no, our anniversary was last week. She goes, no. First time we walked in the store.
Yeah.
Was Free Comic Book Day.
Yeah.
And that's when, of course, the little wheels in my head started turning. Oh, Logan spent $50 a week for the last 5 years. That's $2,500, $12,500. So that whatever that event cost me that first year, I got Logan from that, and all the profit that came after that.
Yeah, definitely.
And then I started breaking it down, and I started looking at how many polls we signed up after every Free Comic Book Day. We were making $100,000 off of Free Comic Book Day from signing up all these new customers.
Yeah,
that's
so
what it's about.
Yeah, yes or no. But again, the cost to do it. But imagine you having to pay 3 to 4 weeks out now for your Free Comic Book Day books. That is crazy. I don't know how stores do it.
I'm telling you, Jesse, there's going to be a lot of people that can't pay for those when they show up because they've been used to being on the dole for so long.
Well, very few shops need 5,000 free comics. Like you were doing an unbelievable job out there doing that many books.
Yeah.
Like,
so here's the
maybe get 3-4 bundles each.
Some interesting notes from a recent article at Bleeding Cool. So it says, while we knew that there was 31 million in debts to the top 30 accounts, the total unsecured claims are north of $46 million. So who else is owed what? And they go over, there's a bunch of creators that are owed money. But the interesting to me is this. They list a lot of external creditors, publishers, printers, service providers, business organizations, and the like. There are a number of disputed amounts. Boom Entertainment for $800,000, Dynamic Forces for $160,000, Action Lab $15,000, Benitez Productions $2,000, Floating World Comics $5,000, American Mythology Press $43,000. And that continues. Also notably, there is, of course, Lunar Distribution was stated at $500,000 in the hole. It's actually $545,000. Titan Publishing, which we're going to talk about here in a second, initially seen as being owed $357,000, is actually owed $410,000. Udon, initially listed as $202,000, but is more like $285,000. Also notably, Diamond UK is being also notably, Diamond UK is listed as being owed over $2 million by Diamond. Other notable non-disputed debts include Avatar Press, Valiant, Oni Press, Dark Horse, and it just keeps going. And it is so much money. But here's very interesting. They also list in assets a $156,000 loan from Steve Jeppe and a $418,000 credit note from Dynamic Forces Dynamite Entertainment.
Yeah, so a couple of things are happening here. You are looking at the audited numbers after they filed. So they filed on a day and they still had product because we're on FOC, right? So we're continually doing stuff. The biggest thing with this, keep in mind, if you owe $20,000 to a publisher, that publisher owes artists $15,000 of that. So this is a trickle to trickle to trickle.
Yeah, but I'm still not forgiving American Mythology on Stiff and Mark Spears.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things that it's the problem is you can't say to one person, well, because Diamond didn't pay me, I can't pay you. Because that person's like, I don't care. My contract is with you.
We had this conversation in June of last year, guys. This entire industry has been a house of cards just waiting to collapse. It's like the Brady Bunch. They're just waiting for the dog running in was Diamond's bankruptcy. And the whole house of cards is collapsing now. It's been a rob Peter to pay Paul. I won't say scheme. The publisher does this to get this. This creator does this to do that. But then Diamond does this to do that. And then the retailers do this to do that. And then, the dog runs in. No, the house of cards falls down.
Yeah. Well, keep in mind, in the 90s, We survived because we had 15,000 stores that just went down to 7,000 stores.
Yeah.
Now we're in a situation where there's only 1,200 stores. So if you take those 1,200 LCSs and we cut it in half again, we don't have.
Well, and then here, not even that, guys. Let's just say 1,200 goes to 600. And we just heard from Swag that one IP, 80% is 50 stores.
Yep.
What if half of those are that? How long do you think DC is going to make comic books for 600 stores?
Yeah.
How long do you think Marvel is going to make comic books for 600 stores?
Right. Exactly.
It's worse than anybody can imagine. I know I feel like I'm the doomsayer of the thing, but I don't see a way out of this without having to rebuild it all from scratch.
Right. Yeah. And keep in mind, anybody that comes in, imagine if you're a store in the 90s, you go through the 90s, and now you're going through today.
Yeah.
Right. And you said there's no way it could be worse than the 90s. And then you're looking at today where we do. I mean, imagine this. Again, you can only imagine this. Imagine if Lunar and Penguin didn't exist.
Oh,
you just had Diamond and this was happening. You want to talk about disaster?
Catastrophe. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I let me get this one part in, Brian. I think right now your goal is to sell comics and not just to distinguish what is new and what is old. You just got to sell books.
Well, in tonight's episode, and I'm sorry, Brian, I wanted to say this earlier. Tonight's episode really shows you how interconnected everything is.
Yes.
Yep.
The convention people, the small publishers, the retailers, the YouTube's verse, all of this is so interconnected, but we've allowed it all to seem dissociated. How many, and I'm not throwing anyone under the bus. How many creators are like, oh, I don't need Diamond to keep making my comics? You kind of do. I don't need conventions to keep selling my comics. You kind of do. It's all interconnected. Nobody is an island in this thing. No one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
I've got some good news. Oh, you had something to say, Brian.
No. I want to hear good news.
Go ahead. Yeah, you've been waiting patiently.
So I found this guy on Instagram, cheddar_comics. I sent it to your Instagram, Brian.
Is that the guy that's donating the comics?
Yeah, 12,000 comics.
12,000 comics. Yeah, I sent that to you too, Brian.
Yeah, this that's a lot of books.
So explain. So let's let him explain what's going on here. Here we go. Let me go ahead and play this for everybody so you guys can all hear it.
Today, I'm donating 12,000 comic books to kids. We are getting ready to donate a large portion of comic books from the Cheddar Warehouse to the Madison Reading Project, which is a nonprofit here in Madison, Wisconsin, and they help promote children's literacy, and I'm finally in a position in my life to be able to help with that, so I want to help in any way I can. I'm going to be prepping a lot of books over the next couple days to make a big run, and we're going to donate to kids in need, help children's literacy, and I feel extremely grateful to finally be in a position in my life to be able to do that. The work is done. The boxes are built. We've got about 40 lawn boxes, probably an estimated 12,000 comics going to the Madison Reading Project. I am extremely happy that I'm going to be able to donate these. It's a true privilege to be able to give back in any way to anyone, let alone at this scale. Finally found a place that will happily take a bunch of comics and give them to kids in need. And man, if I could get one kid into comics because of this stuff, or if not, if they enjoy it for the day, if they enjoy it for the hour, what more can you want out of life? I mean, honestly, what more can you want out of life? There we go.
Hey, this is Josh Bolofko from the Madison Reading Project. I'm the donor engagement specialist here on the team. Madison Reading Project, we have programs and services that serve children from birth to 18. And our mission is to make sure that we get free books and literacy resources in the hands of kids and educators free of charge to them.
We hardly ever get comics donated to Madison Reading Project. So we're absolutely thrilled about the very large donation today. I'm already thinking about all the different activities we might be able to do or engage. I would say definitely the middle schoolers and the high schoolers. We're very excited. We're going to start thinking of all the ways to use them and get them out into the community.
Well, just left the Madison Reading Project. They said kids are always asking for comics. They never get any. Every one of those books is going to find a good home. So, I'm getting emotional, you know. It's just, you just never think you're going to be able to give back, you know. Today's the end of that.
That's pretty damn cool, man.
Yep.
Pretty damn cool.
Today I'm donating 12.
So Cheddar Comics, go give them a follow, you guys, if you aren't already following them on IG. That is very, very cool. And Chris, we salute you over here at Beyond Wednesdays for doing this. Yeah. That's very cool.
Yeah, giving back to your community is very, very important. I think it gives you a moment of peace. You're giving comic book therapy to youngins that it just takes, like he said, it just takes one to read one book. It doesn't matter if it gets ripped up at the end or anything. It's the fact that you're giving back to your community without asking for anything back. And I think that's very, very important.
And
so
Chris is in the chat right now. He says, thank you guys for showing my video. And no, thank you, man, for doing a great job. And you're the type of person we want in this
comics
industry.
in kids' hands. It's awesome.
Yes. Amen. All right. Let's talk about what we have coming up, you guys. Next Tuesday, we will have a special early show. We're going to be doing the show 3 hours early, 6 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be a special show where we're going to be having another great set of panel guests, including Andrew Sumner from Titan Comics, which is going to be amazing. Philip Sablik from Ignition Press, who was a standout at Comics Pro. And, of course, our good friend Mickey Finnegan, a.k.a. Swaggle House, who was also at Comics Pro. And we're going to kind of deep dive into the same topics we've been talking about, you guys. Making the comic industry greater and better and keeping it alive, and the dominoes falling from the Diamond bankruptcy, and where the future, how we see comics in the future in the next 2 years.
Well, it just goes to
that's an unbelievable lineup.
Yeah. But, you know, the thing is there's so many opportunities right now. This is like COVID. I was telling everybody during COVID, when we get out of this thing, if you have any new idea, try it. Look how many new publishers popped up after COVID. Look how many new conventions popped up after COVID. Then you get to a spot like this. And I think this is, if you think that this thing is going to fix itself and you're just going to wander through all of this like, you know, one of those YouTube videos where the guy misses the truck by an inch and then the wheel falls off and he misses that too. And you're like, oh, you know, you're not. You need to make your own way in this. You need to figure out how to make your life substantial, and you cannot wait for this industry to fix your life for you.
Right. You know, when I used to say this statement when I first came into the actual industry, not as a comic book guy selling at the swap meet and all that, but when I literally got into the industry, I used to say there's comic book store owners and there's business people that sell comics. And when I said that, people would jump in my face and say, you shouldn't be in here. If you're just a business person selling, you shouldn't be in this industry. This is about comic book store owners. No, it's a business that sells comics. And you have to look at every platform out there. There's no better time in comic book history than today with all the opportunities you have to sell. And if you're going, like Dennis said, if you're going to be the guy that just waits, well, we'll see what happens in April 1st. Okay, well, we'll wait that 60 days. No. That's not going to work. You're not going to make this in the comic industry. We always say that if you walk down the aisle at a comic convention, you can tell who the successful artists are and who the non-successful, because the successful artists are standing up, the non-successful are sitting down, right? And that's where you are socially. You have to be, I think people equate everything to dollars, not realizing that if you post something every day, that's worth just as much as selling something in this day and age, and all the platforms that you can post on as well. So I think at the end of the day, I'm looking as a positive way that, listen, we have these opportunities to sell no matter what happens in the diamond world. I'm still going to sell and then make some money. And that's very important. I can't wait. Does it hurt me tremendously reading that Josh write-up on the goodbye, the swan song? Absolutely. But I also know that our best way to move forward is to sell more books.
Well, speaking of Josh and that write-up and his thing saying goodbye, one thing that I really hope that Josh and Steve, for that matter, find a way to come back into this community and talk to shows like us, come on shows like this. It doesn't have to be our show. It could be any show, and talk about their life in comics and how important, because they are so important.
No, I'm kicking Josh's ass if he goes on any other show.
They're so important, and you don't hear from them as much as we should. And I would really love to hear from Josh. I would love to hear from Steve, obviously, but we don't hear a lot from Josh either. And
No.
I think that they have some great stories to tell, and I want people to hear from them because they are so important to this medium and to this industry. And they deserve to kind of get their flowers. I know everything that's going on with Diamond is a big deal, and they're going through some really tough times, and with what's going on. But they deserve their flowers now. They
Right.
deserve their flowers now. They shouldn't have to wait until they're gone to get their flowers.
Right.
And I would love to give them their flowers on shows like this or platforms, YouTube platforms, content platforms, podcasts. I want to hear from them in a major way.
Right, exactly. And I think the thing with Diamond is, I don't know what the percentage is, but a good portion of consumers had no idea who Diamond was till 5 weeks ago. Why? Because they only buy through their LCS, or they go to a convention, and unless they're at New York and San Diego, they see the Diamond booth. So for all this to hit, they're just seeing the negatives.
Yeah.
They're not seeing the previous 40 plus years of this
All
is
the
what
things
we're
they
doing.
did for it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think at the end of the day, the Jeppies will do what they do, and they'll find a new path in life, and we wish them well. And but I think that's everything. What Lunar is saying, we don't want to go down the path of Diamond. So that's why we have Massive to kind of break down those 100 stores on, okay, what 20 stores can we bring in today? And so they're doing that. Penguin's doing the same thing. And I think and Penguin is a different story, right? Because Penguin has so much more. I don't even know what the percentage of comics is for them. What, 5%?
Well, can't even be that, dude. It's got to be 1 or 2% easy.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's kind of where we're at. I think every week as we get closer to that April 1st.
Let's put it this way. Most of the New York Times bestseller list is put out there, distributed by Penguin Random House.
Yeah.
Comic books don't make that list.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's kind of where we're at. But I think it's crazy news. And however your business is run by that, do as you may. I love the AI conversation because I think that was I like the AI conversation because every AI conversation has been no.
Yeah.
And that's been the whole story.
When I watched that today, I was like, holy shit, Hank Azaria gets this. He understands this better than anybody else.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, does a convention who's building a web page use AI? You have to look at everything as a whole. But at the end of the day, sell to your customers. They're going to tell you what they want. They're going to tell you what they don't want.
It's not about you. It's about the consumer.
Right. Now, the question I have is Dynamite is on FOC.
Back
right?
again. Yeah. Nope. Apparently something happened from when Nikki said they were leaving to now.
Right. So that's FOC. If they're going to start on FOC, in 2 weeks? So those books won't be distributed through Diamond.
We don't know. We don't know how this is structuring. Nobody's talking. We're the plebs. We'll figure it out afterwards. But the point is what I said earlier. If you're sitting around waiting, then you're already too late.
Yeah.
I mean, you should have 5 plans in place to make every dollar you need to make in the next however many years or months. You better have it right now planned out, and you better be doing it.
Right.
Yeah. The only thing I have at Diamond is Dynamite. That's the only orders I have in because I can't get them anywhere else. So
yeah.
And there's three big books that I sell that are on that FOC.
Who did you say you were buying your books from, Emmet, other than Diamond?
A Lunar and now
Penguin.
What is it? PRH.
Yeah, Penguin Random House.
Okay. All right. So weren't you ordering from a web page at some point?
Yeah, always they all use a web page. Diamonds was the best one out of them all.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I thought you were ordering direct from a store because the discount was the same or something like that. But
no, I was thinking about you can't. Well, now that DC's not with Diamond, I probably could, because that rule was a Diamond rule that you can't sub from somebody else.
Right.
But I might do that. It depends if my buddy is not very far away and if he's willing to do it for me, then I might, because I think he's 52 or 55%, and I'm at 35 for DC. So
right, that's crazy. Bryan, are we not announcing the other guests, or you're holding off on that?
No. So Tuesday we'll have. So Tuesday we will have Andrew Sumner from Titan, Philip Sablik from Ignition Press, and Swaggle House joining us. We will have a special show on Thursday with the one and only Eric July, aka Young Ripa, aka creator of the Ripaverse, to talk the same type of stuff we've been talking about. He was very visionary on his thoughts on how to create a publishing house and distribute his own books to customers' hands, and he's doing a good job at it in a time when distribution in the comics world is changing rapidly. And he's sitting kind of pretty right now. So it's going to be very interesting. We're going to have Eric July here Thursday, the 6th of March. So
same time, though, 9 p.m.
9 p.m. Eastern, yeah.
9 p.m. on Thursday.
So Tuesday at 6 p.m., Thursday at 9 p.m.
Right.
Yep. So excellent stuff, you guys. We are about 3 hours and 20 minutes into this show. I want to say thank you to everybody that hung out with us tonight. If you're not subscribed, please think about subscribing. If you enjoyed the show tonight, this is the type of stuff that we put out every Tuesday. It's our 52nd episode of this show. We've had a lot of fun doing this show, and we've We've got a lot of great content in that playlist, so go check it out if it's your first time here. Hit that like button. There is still currently 85 of you watching, and there's only 56 likes. So if you guys can, please hit that like button before you guys leave the show tonight. And then if you're able to support with monetary, please check out the membership stuff below in the members only section. We have some really cool things that are going to be happening soon for the members of Beyond Wednesdays here on YouTube. And WonderCon is coming up, you guys. WonderCon's going to have some big announcements for Beyond Wednesdays and what we're doing going forward. So, again, make sure you guys go check out each and every one of these guys' companies, whether it's Jesse James Comics, Wonder World Comics, or Haven for Heroes Comics. Make sure you guys go give them a follow and go check out their stores.
And I just dropped a new video tonight about how much money I think it takes to open a comic book store. So all you guys in the chat talking about you want to open a store, watch my video.
There you go. There you go. That being said, we're calling it a night, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you. Adios.